Chapter 661, Feng Yunfei. Feng Tianwu's expression remained unchanged when faced with the gazes of so many people, and she still chatted cheerfully with Duan Lingtian. Who's that violet-clothed kid? I've seen him before, right here 9 days ago. He'd successively beaten Feng Hao and Yi Shang into pig heads. Feng Hao was killed by young Miss Tianwu right after that. Looks like his strength isn't weak. At the same time that the group of Feng clan disciples discussed animatedly, many male disciples looked at Duan Lingtian with gazes of envy. How they wished that the person chatting cheerfully with young Miss Tianwu was them. At this moment, they wished for nothing more than to replace Duan Lingtian. Tianwu, looks like your charm is exceedingly great. Duan Lingtian smiled. Big brother Duan, don't make fun of me. Feng Tianwu's beautiful face went slightly rosy as she glared at Duan Lingtian. This scene caused many Feng clan male disciples to be dumbstruck, and they felt the red-clothed young woman before them was like a celestial maiden that had descended from the heavens into the mortal world. You're Feng Tianwu. Suddenly, a slightly neutral voice sounded out from afar. Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu stopped moving at practically the same time, and then they looked towards the source of the voice. In the distance, a young man in azure clothes was walking towards them. Duan Lingtian frowned. He was able to sense the hostility the young man had towards Tianwu. The young man walked over slowly until he stood before Feng Tianwu, then he scanned Feng Tianwu with a calm gaze and a tranquil expression, and he seemed like a piece of wood that was ignorant of women. Who are you? Feng Tianwu asked with a calm expression. Feng Yunfei. The young man spoke frankly. Meanwhile, a wave of whispered discussions entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. It's young Master Yunfei. What does he want to do? From the discussions of the group of Feng clan disciples, Duan Lingtian realized that this young man possessed an extraordinary identity in the Feng clan. Otherwise, how could so many people address him as young master? Is there something you need? When she saw Feng Yunfei didn't use a detestable gaze to look at her, Feng Tianwu's tone calmed slightly. Feng Tianwu, I want to challenge you. Do you dare fight me? Feng Yunfei asked with a deep voice. Challenge. Including Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu, all the surrounding people were stunned as soon as they heard Feng Yunfei. Why? Feng Tianwu frowned and asked. Feng Yunfei took a deep breath. The Feng clan is able to recommend 2 people to participate in the dynasty martial competition tomorrow. One of those positions is possessed by Feng Yunshang. I know that I'm inferior to him, so it's fine. But on what basis have you occupied a position? Because you're the only daughter of the eldest master. As he finished speaking, Feng Yunfei's tone was filled with unwillingness. Whoosh! Feng Yunfei's words was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples, and it caused the surrounding group of Feng clan disciples to be shocked and come to a sudden understanding. No wonder I heard earlier that young Master Yunfei didn't have the luck to obtain one of the 2 positions to participate in the dynasty martial competition of our Feng clan. I was puzzled earlier about who would be able to seize young Master Yunfei's positions since he's the strongest besides young Master Yunshang in the younger generation of our Feng clan. So it turns out that young Miss Tianwu has occupied a position. Even though young Miss Tianwu's strength isn't bad, she ought to not be a match for young Master Yunfei, right? Supposedly, young Master Yunfei broke through to the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage recently. Young Master Yunfei is challenging young Miss Tianwu because he wants to reclaim the position that belonged to him. Many Feng clan disciples guessed. 2 positions. When he heard the discussions of the group of Feng clan disciples, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be stunned. As the strongest clan in the Darken dynasty that was merely inferior to the imperial family, the Feng clan only possessed 2 recommendation positions in the dynasty martial competition. After all, even the various empires possessed 10 positions each. Young Miss Tianwu, do you dare fight me? If you win, then I'll obey any request of yours. But if I'm lucky enough to win, then give that positions of yours to me. Feng Yunfei looked at Feng Tianwu, and his eyes were filled with awe-inspiring battle intent. In his eyes, Feng Tianwu seemed to not be a drop-dead gorgeous beauty, but was instead an ordinary opponent, and he wouldn't hold back because of his opponent's beautiful skin suit. 7th level of the Void Initiation stage. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out onto Feng Yunfei at the first possible moment and detected his cultivation. Sure enough, it was just like the Feng clan disciples said, Feng Yunfei was a 7th level Void Initiation stage martial artist. I wonder if young Miss Tianwu will agree. Even if young Miss Tianwu doesn't agree, young Master Yunfei will be helpless. After all, young Miss Tianwu is the only daughter of the eldest master. If I'm young Miss Tian Wu, I'd surely disregard to young Master Yunfei. At the same time that the group of Feng clan disciples discussed animatedly, they looked curiously at Feng Tianwu. Many people felt that Feng Tianwu wouldn't agree. As far as they were concerned, even though Feng Tianwu was the only daughter of the most admirable eldest master of their Feng clan, Feng Tianwu was too young after all, and she was also a woman. Moreover, Feng Yunfei was at least 10 years elder to Feng Tianwu. They didn't think that Feng Tianwu could be a match for Feng Yunfei. I can agree to it, but forget about the request. You don't seem to be hateful, so if I defeat you, just leave. Feng Tianwu's decisions exceeded the expectations of everyone present except Duan Lingtian. Including Feng Yunfei, no one imagined that Feng Tianwu would really agree. Especially Feng Yunfei. He'd originally come looking for Feng Tianwu as a last resort to save a hopeless situation, yet he never imagined that Feng Tianwu would agree to his challenge. Now, the opportunity was before his eyes, and it caused him to be excited. Although if he'd defeated Feng Tianwu, it would perhaps cause that eldest master of their Feng clan to be unhappy, but he couldn't care about so much. He wanted to participate in the dynasty martial competition and compete with the young geniuses from the Darken dynasty and the various empires. He wanted to fight for the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties as well. Although the chances were slight, it was his aspiration. Thank you, young Miss Tianwu, for agreeing. Feng Yunfei took a deep breath and took a few steps back before standing in confrontation with Feng Tianwu. Big brother Duan, wait for me at the side for a while. Feng Tianwu looked at Duan Lingtian and smiled lightly. Okay. Duan Lingtian nodded and stood aside, and he looked at the scene before him with a calm gaze. This Feng Yunfei was a 7th level Void Initiation stage martial artist, whereas Tianwu was similarly a 7th level Void Initiation stage martial artist. The gap between the two could only be reflected from their concept. Young Miss Tianwu, how about we don't use spirit weapons during this spar? Feng Yunfei probed. The reason he had this decision was because he was slightly lacking in self-confidence as he only possessed a grade 5 spirit weapon and not a grade 4 spirit weapon, whereas, as the only daughter of the Feng clan's eldest master, the young woman before him surely had a grade 4 spirit weapon. This was something he didn't doubt in the slightest. Although he didn't think the young woman's cultivation and comprehension of concept could surpass him, but he still decided to be cautious. After all, it was related to whether he was able to obtain the position to participate in the dynasty martial competition. All right, Feng Tianwu lightly nodded and her beautiful face remained unchanged as she had no objections towards this decision of Feng Yunfei's. This Feng Yunfei is cautious enough. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Young Miss Tianwu, watch out. When he saw Feng Tianwu agree, a bright light flashed within Feng Yunfei's eyes, and he flashed out like an eagle, and his hands that contained origin energy that raged and leapt about clawed out like a pair of sharp eagle claws. Whoosh! Instantly, 10 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared in the sky above Feng Yunfei, and they flashed out along with him to sweep towards Feng Tianwu's location with an imposing manner that shot into the sky like a rainbow. Not only that, traces of azure-colored energy suddenly suffused the origin energy on Feng Yunfei's claws, and it revealed a strand of extraordinary aura. Concept. Wind concept. Meanwhile, Feng Yunfei had arrived nearby Feng Tianwu, and his claws abruptly clawed out, causing 2 claw prints that were condensed into form from origin energy to whistle out while being coiled by dense wind blades on its surroundings. Whoosh, 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 After a short moment, the wind blade in the surroundings of the claw print instantly scattered out to spray down onto Feng Tianwu like a rain of flowers that covered the sky. Every single wind blade tore open the sky and gave rise to a wave of ear-piercing sounds. Swoosh, swoosh. Most importantly, amongst those wind blades that covered the sky was 2 claw print that were condensed into form from origin energy and were sweeping over, causing Feng Tianwu to be in danger. At this moment, another 6 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared in the sky above Feng Yunfei. Obviously, he'd comprehended 6th level wind concept. Feng Yunfei revealed a smile when he saw his attacks cover the heavens and the earth as they swept towards Feng Tianwu, and he seemed as if he'd already seen the scene of Feng Tianwu being defeated. The surrounding crowd of Feng clan disciples that were spectating couldn't help but break out in cold sweat for Feng Tianwu. The atmosphere at the scene was terrifyingly silent. 6th level wind concept. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched slightly. He was initially slightly worried that Feng Yunfei's comprehension in wind concept would be extremely strong, Yet when he saw Feng Yunfei had only comprehended 6th level wind concept, he completely set his mind at rest. Although he didn't know what level Feng Tianwu's fire concept was at now, Feng Tianwu was a possessor of the fire spirit body after all, and the speed of her comprehension of fire concept was something that was difficult to reach for ordinary people. This was something that he could confirm via the memories of the rebirth martial emperor. When faced with Feng Yunfei's attacks that covered the heavens and the earth, the origin energy on Feng Tianwu's body roiled and seemed as if a ball of white-colored flames enveloped her within it. Subsequently, strands of deep crimson-red energy appeared within the white-colored flames, causing the half of the white-colored flames to be tainted red, and it was extremely peculiar. Annihilate. Under the gazes of everyone present, Feng Tianwu's cherry lips slightly moved as she unhurriedly spoke a single word. Subsequently, everyone saw Feng Tianwu move. With a raise of her hand, the flames that were half red and half white swept out to blood in the sky and seemed to have transformed into numerous shooting stars that flashed out swiftly. For a time, half the sky was enveloped by the shooting stars that were either white or red. Swish, 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 the shooting stars tore through the sky and caused a piercing whistling sound to resound out in the sky. 661 Chapter 662, 8th Level Wind Concept. The numerous shooting stars flashed past the horizon and seemed as if they'd grown eyes as they each collided with one of the wind blades that swept through the entire sky. Not only that, there were another 2 extremely enormous shooting stars that directly flashed out to intercept the 2 claw prints that belonged to Feng Yunfei. These 2 claw prints of Feng Yunfei were the strongest amongst all his attacks. Bang, 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 in the sky, the shooting stars that were formed by the interweaving of origin energy and fire concept ceaselessly collided with the wind blade, and they crashed and exploded together. After they exploded, they seemed to have transformed into numerous dazzling and striking fireworks. In next to no time, the people present saw that after Feng Tianwu's attacks easily crushed Feng Yunfei's attacks, they flashed out without losing the slightest momentum. In next to no time, the shooting stars that covered the sky swept towards a direction, and then they converged together to form a sharp sword that stopped right before Feng Yunfei's throat. The sharp sword just floated there like that, and it only had to move slightly to cause Feng Yunfei to die on the spot. I've lost. Feng Yunfei's countenance went ghastly pale when he felt the coldness that came from his throat, and his legs seemed as if they were filled with lead and were difficult to move in the slightest. In the sky above the red-clothed young woman in the distance was 18 lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouettes circling in the air and fluttering endlessly. 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage. 8th level Fire Concept. This was the strength of the opponent he was facing now. Earlier, he wanted to dodge, but his opponent was so strong that he had no place to flee. Since he was born, it was the first time that a feeling of extremely powerless defeat arose from the depths of his heart. This feeling defeat was something that he'd never felt even when he faced the strongest in the Feng clan's younger generation, Feng Yunxiang. He didn't deny that Feng Yunxiang was stronger than him, but Feng Yunxiang's age was similar to his after all, and Feng Yunxiang wasn't much stronger than him. But the red-clothed young woman before him was more than 10 years younger than him. Such a young woman possesses such a strength caused him to feel that he'd lived all these years in vain. Whoosh! At the same time, the surrounding crowd of spectating Feng clan disciples went into a complete uproar. Heavens! We aren't seeing things, right? A single move. Feng Tianwu defeated Feng Yunfei in merely a single more. The scene before them was truly difficult to believe, and some people even felt that they might be dreaming. But when they stretched out their hands to fiercely pinch their thighs, the pain that came from their thighs instead told them that they weren't dreaming. Everything they saw was real. A young woman that seemed to be less than 25 years old had defeated the second strongest expert in the younger generation of their Feng clan, Feng Yunfei. As expected of the eldest master's daughter, young Miss Tianwu has inherited the eldest master's natural talent. Too terrifying. Even the eldest master seems to have been inferior to young Miss Tianwu at such an age, right? I thought young Miss Tianwu would lose to Feng Yunfei, yet I never imagined that young Miss Tianwu only used a single move to defeat young Master Yunfei. Not only is young Miss Tianwu a 7th level Void Initiation Stage martial artist, she has even comprehended 8th level Fire concept. Her comprehension ability is even more heaven-defying than her natural talent. The surrounding Feng clan disciples that were spectating discussed animatedly and couldn't stop discussing even after a long time. Their eyes were filled with burning admiration and adoration. Feng Tianwu's strength had subdued them. Whoosh! The sharp sword of Feng Tianwu's that was at Feng Yunfei's throat gradually dispersed, and it perished in the sky. It was as if it had never appeared. Subsequently, she glanced indifferently at Feng Yunfei before paying no further attention to him. Big brother Ling Tian, let's go back. When Feng Tianwu's gaze moved onto Duan Ling Tian, her face bloomed into a smile that came from the herd, and it caused many Feng clan male disciples to be dumbstruck. Duan Ling Tian returned to his senses when he heard her voice. Feng Tianwu's ability earlier had similarly exceeded his expectations. Although he was mentally prepared and felt that since Feng Tianwu was a possessor of the fire spirit body and her comprehension in fire concept wouldn't be low, he never imagined that Feng Tianwu's fire concept would have actually been comprehended to the 8th level. No wonder a possessor of the fire spirit body is called the favorite of fire. If she wasn't favored by fire, how would she be able to comprehend 8th level fire concept at such an age without the assistance of a concept fragment? Duan Ling Tian sighed in his heart. When they saw Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu's figure vanish before their eyes, Feng Yunfei and the other group of Feng clan disciples returned to their senses. No wonder besides young Master Yun Shang, the other position was given to young Miss Tianwu. Young Miss Tianwu's strength is indeed stronger than young Master Yunfei, and it's much stronger. Yeah, with young Miss Tianwu's strength, even if she were to compete with young Master Yun Xian, I'm afraid it would be difficult to decide a winner. If they didn't use spirit weapons, it would indeed be difficult to determine a victor, but once they utilize spirit weapons, it ought to be young Master Yun Shang that would be superior. After all, young Master Yun Shang is already an 8th level void initiation stage martial artist, and his origin energy foundation is stronger. Besides that, young Master Yun Shang has comprehended 7th level saber concept. You're right, but in terms of age, young Miss Tianwu can't be compared to young Master Yun Shang. As once young Miss Tianwu was at the same age as young Master Yun Shang, the current young Master Yun Shang would be completely inferior to young Miss Tianwu. Yeah, young Miss Tianwu is still young and her latent potential that was unearthed is extremely great. As expected of the daughter of our Feng clan's eldest master, she's extraordinary as expected. Along with the dispersal of the group of Feng clan disciples, it wasn't long before the entire Feng clan knew of Feng Tianwu's strength. Feng Tianwu quickly became the next publicly acknowledged peerless genius of the Feng clan in the recent 100 years after Feng Wudao. Most shocking of it all was naturally Feng Tianwu's gender. A woman possessing such natural talent and comprehension ability was shocking. Right when the entire Feng clan was in an uproar, Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu had already returned to the private estate that belonged to Feng Wudao and stood in the rear courtyard. The two of them stood facing each other and were in confrontation. Within the nearby pergola, Feng Wudao and Elder Kong sat facing each other, and they looked at Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu with interest. At this moment, when facing Duan Ling Tian, Feng Tianwu didn't seem similar to how she was when facing Feng Yunfei earlier. She didn't take Feng Yunfei seriously, but the nearby Duan Ling Tian seemed unfathomable in her eyes. Especially the confident smile on Duan Ling Tian's face, it had unknowingly influenced her and caused her to unconsciously feel that Duan Ling Tian was invincible. Feng Tianwu took a deep breath and moved her gaze away. She knew that if she were to continue in this state, then she would lose before the battle started. Big brother Duan, watch out! Feng Tianwu shouted out lightly and chose to attack first to seize the initiative, and she flashed out, seeming to have transformed into a blazing flame that swept towards Duan Ling Tian. It was as if she wanted to swallow Duan Ling Tian. Whoosh! In the sky, 18 ancient horned dragon silhouettes flashed out with an imposing manner then shot into the sky like a rainbow. As soon as Feng Tianwu attacked, her entire origin energy and concept completely exploded out, and she didn't hold back in the slightest. Duan Ling Tian stood on the spot and was unmoving like a mountain. When he saw the flames Feng Tianwu transformed into about to arrive before him, strands of milky white flames finally arose on his body, and they were precisely his blazing origin energy. Not only that, within the origin energy was strands of azure-colored energy that were suffused with a strange aura. Wind concept. Tianwu, take this. As soon as Duan Ling Tian finished speaking, his right hand flashed out like a bolt of lightning, and it seemed as if he was assisted by the gods. Tempest point. The sounds of whistling sounded out as the condensed origin energy point force flashed out from the tip of Duan Ling Tian's figure and was coiled by dense azure energy to intercept Feng Tianwu that assaulted over. Slap. Along with the origin energy point force hitting Feng Tianwu, a wave of light noises abruptly sounded out. Feng Tianwu's figure stopped and the flaming palm print that flashed out along with her was instantly shattered. But the energy within the origin energy point force was partially consumed because of this. 8th level wind concept. At the same time that Feng Tianwu exclaimed in surprise, her figure flashed out once more like flames to sweep to the side and barely dodge Duan Lingtian's tempest point that didn't slow down in the slightest. The origin energy point force flashed out to finally easily penetrate the ground and vanish in the end. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian stood on the spot, and he stood there without moving and in a composed manner. The attack from before didn't even make the clothes on Duan Lingtian sway in the slightest. 8th level of the Void Initiation stage. As she looked at the 19 ancient horned dragon silhouettes in the sky above Duan Lingtian, slight shock suffused Feng Tianwu's face. During these past few years, her improvement was something that she herself felt was already abnormal, yet a large part of the reason she had such a great improvement was because she was a possessor of the fire spirit body. But what about Duan Lingtian? Duan Lingtian didn't possess any innate spirit body and was only a martial artist that was as ordinary could be. Big brother Duan, you're truly formidable. Feng Tianwu couldn't refrain from exclaiming in surprise. Tianwu, do you want to continue? Duan Lingtian smiled as she asked. There's no need. Feng Tianwu laughed bitterly as she shook her head. Big brother Duan, if you told me earlier that you've already broken through to the 8th level of the Void Initiation stage and have comprehended 8th level wind concept, I wouldn't have sparred with you. If she knew about Duan Lingtian's cultivation earlier, why would she give herself over to be beaten? 8th level of the Void Initiation stage. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but laugh to himself. It looked like that his intentional concealment of cultivation wasn't seen through by Tianwu. After all, he wasn't an 8th level Void Initiation stage martial artist, but was instead a 9th level Void Initiation stage martial artist. As for wind concept, he broke through to the 8th level yesterday. Lingtian, you really concealed your cultivation deeply. Meanwhile, Feng Wudao who sat within the pergola stood up and walked out slowly, and then he scanned Duan Lingtian from top to bottom as amazement covered his face. When he saw the violet-clothed young man before him for the first time all those years ago, he felt that the young man was extraordinary. Perhaps that prediction is true, otherwise, how could fate have caused him to encounter Tianwu? Feng Wudao thought in his heart. At this moment, he believed even more that Duan Lingtian was the man in the prediction, the man that could save his daughter. 662 Chapter 663, Unusual Change in the Devil Seal Tablet. Someone from a tiny little imperial kingdom actually possesses such a cultivation, and it even far exceeds me from all those years ago. He can be said to be in a class of his own in the entire Darken dynasty. Feng Wudao sighed in his heart. Not long after, the sky gradually dimmed down and the veil of night descended. Duan Lingtian, Feng Tianwu, Feng Wudao, Elder Kong, and Grandma Shu sat together around a table covered in fine wine and delicacies that night, and all of this was prepared by Grandma Shu. All of them sat together and started eating, and they occasionally chatted idly. The dynasty martial competition is tomorrow. With Lingtian's strength, becoming eminent in the martial competition to obtain the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties isn't difficult, but if you want to obtain an outstanding result at the martial competition of the 10 dynasties, then your cultivation must advance. Feng Wudao looked at Duan Lingtian and spoke slowly. Duan Lingtian nodded as he was already mentally prepared about this since long ago. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian recalled something and couldn't help but ask. Uncle Feng, I heard today that the Feng clan only possesses 2 recommendation positions for the dynasty martial competition. Yes. Feng Wudao nodded. Why is it like that? Duan Lingtian had a puzzled expression as he asked. Even the various empires possess 10 positions each. Could it be that the Feng clan is inferior to a mere empire? An empire was undoubtedly a colossus. But if a power like the Feng clan wanted to sweep through an empire and the empire didn't possess the protection of the imperial family of the Darken dynasty, then an empire wouldn't utterly be unable to withstand a power like the Feng clan. The various empires under the Darken dynasty each possessed 1 void interpretation stage expert at most, whereas, there were many void interpretation stage experts in the Feng clan. You can't compare it like that. Feng Wudao shook his head and obviously knew something. Duan Lingtian had a puzzled expression. Why can't I compare it like that? Feng Wudao smiled. Do you know that the dynasty martial competition this time is divided into 2 phases? 2 phases. Duan Lingtian was stunned. Yes, 2 phases. Feng Wudao nodded and then said, Tomorrow is the first phase of the dynasty martial competitions. The young geniuses of the darkened dynasty won't be competing tomorrow. Duan Lingtian pondered for a moment when he heard Feng Wudao, and then he asked curiously. Could it be that tomorrow is a competition between the young geniuses of the various empires? Yes. Feng Wudao nodded once more. The strongest 30 young geniuses of the various empires will be decided on tomorrow. These 30 young geniuses will obtain the qualification to participate in the second phase of the dynasty martial competition. During the second phase of the dynasty martial competition, these 30 young geniuses will compete for the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties with the young geniuses of our darkened dynasty. Now you understand why our Feng clan only possesses 2 recommendation positions, right? Duan Lingtian nodded when faced with Feng Wudao's question at the end. Actually, it isn't only our Feng clan. Feng Wudao continued. Besides the imperial family possessing 3 positions, comparatively eminent powers in the territory of the darkened dynasty like our Feng clan each possess 2 positions, and as for those ordinary powers, they only possess a single recommendation position in the dynasty martial competition this time. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding. In this way, that Zhang clan and Yi clan have 2 positions as well. Feng Tianwu looked at Feng Wudao. Yes. Feng Wudao nodded. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed as he was instantly slightly lacking in interest towards the dynasty martial competition that was held tomorrow. Tomorrow was a battle between the young geniuses of the various empires. Duan Lingtian wasn't interested in this. It wasn't that he looked down on the young geniuses of the various empires, but as the young geniuses of mere empires, their strengths were still limited compared to the top geniuses of the darkened dynasty. Not to mention anyone else. Just Mozan, who came with me from the Darkstone Empire, although he was the #1 genius of the Darkstone Empire a year ago, if he didn't acquire any fortuitous encounters during the past year, then he would at most be at the 5th level of the Void Initiation stage. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. After they ate their fills, Duan Lingtian and the others dispersed. Big brother Duan, I'll see you tomorrow. Outside a small courtyard that was elegant, Feng Tianwu waved at Duan Lingtian before turning and entering the small courtyard. Only after he saw her in did Duan Lingtian leave and return to his own small courtyard. That night, Duan Lingtian held onto the wind concept fragment and continued comprehending. Of course, he knew clearly in his heart that it was impossible for he who had just comprehended 8th level wind concept to comprehend 9th level wind concept in a short period of time. I won't be greedy, allow me to comprehend 9th level wind concept in 3 or 4 months, and comprehend 1st level intermediate wind concept in 7 or 8 months. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he thought in his heart. If someone found out about Duan Lingtian's current thoughts, they would surely be speechless. This was not being greedy. The night gradually darkened, and Duan Lingtian finally put away the wind concept fragment before lying on his bed and falling into deep sleep. It had already been a long time since he slept properly. After Duan Lingtian fell asleep, strands of moonlight beams of moonlight entered from the open window and scattered onto Duan Lingtian in tiny dots. If Duan Lingtian was outside his room now, he would surely notice that the moon tonight was exceedingly round, and it was a full moon. Suddenly, there just happened to be a ray of moonlight that descended onto the spatial ring on Duan Lingtian's hand. From the outside, nothing seemed to be off, yet an unexpected event had occurred in the space within the spatial ring. In the exceedingly quiet space within the spatial ring, various types of things were placed all around in an orderly manner. These things were placed around by Duan Lingtian's mental intentions. Right at this moment, a wave of light sounds was emitted out from an inconspicuous corner of the space within the spatial ring. If one were to look carefully, one would be able to notice that a broken stone tablet was lightly trembling in that corner. At the same time, a strand of moonlight had actually entered from outside into the spatial ring through unknown means and it ceaselessly gushed into the stone tablet. The frequency of the stone tablet's light trembling grew higher and higher. After an unknown amount of time, or perhaps it was that the sky started to brighten, but the moonlight gradually vanished. Yet atop the surface of the stone tablet was a strand of a faint sheen of moonlight, the sheen gradually fused into the strange name on the tablet's surface before vanishing. When the last trace of moonlight vanished, an unusual change occurred on the stone tablet. Whoosh! The tablet flew up into the sky and fiercely flew out to smash towards a pile of origin stone at a side in the space within the spatial ring, and it smashed the origin stones to the point of scattering them in all directions. Subsequently, the stone tablet continued flying out and smashed some medicinal materials that were left at another side. Whoosh! Whoosh, 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 comma. The stone tablet flew out successively, and every single time it flew out, it would smash everything in the space within the spatial ring to become a complete mess. Gradually, the stone tablet seemed to have lost its strength and completely quieted down. It could be imagined that if Duan Lingtian saw everything within his spatial ring, he would surely turn pale with fear. But Duan Lingtian currently didn't know everything that had happened within his spatial ring. Outside the spatial ring was a completely different world. The sky gradually brightened and Duan Lingtian, who lay on the bed, woke up. The dynasty martial competition is starting. After Duan Lingtian casually washed up, he withdrew a new set of clothes from his spatial ring with a thought in his heart, but when he intended to toss the set of old clothes back into the spatial ring, he was instead completely stunned. Heavens! What happened? With a command in his heart, the space within the spatial ring appeared completely before his eyes. But the current space within the spatial ring caused him to be stunned. A mess. Too much of a mess. What's going on? If it wasn't for the space within the spatial ring being unable to hold things that contained life, I would really think that I was robbed. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched. If it wasn't for him being extremely sure about the condition in the space within the spatial ring, he would really think that the space had always been in such a mess. After thinking for a long time, Duan Lingtian was unable to wrap his head around the matter. Forget it, I'll arrange the things first. Although the space within the spatial ring was in a complete mess, but it was fortunate that all the things Duan Lingtian kept within weren't damaged, and in next to no time, these things were placed back into position with a thought. Even this Devilseal tablet ran over here. After he put back most of the things, Duan Lingtian noticed that the broken stone tablet he'd obtained from the Swamp of Death in the Crimson Sky Kingdom had actually moved from its corner. What exactly happened within the spatial ring? Even such a heavy thing like the Devilseal tablet ran out from the corner over there. Now, Duan Lingtian felt a chill run down his spine, and he felt that what happened was slightly abnormal. The Devilseal tablet was something Duan Lingtian obtained within the strange palace when he entered deep into the Swamp of Death with the intention of searching for the secret of his father, Duan Rufang's, disappearance. At that time, there was an extremely strong soul within the Devilseal tablet, and it flashed out from the tablet with an intention of seizing his body. At that time, Duan Lingtian noticed that the soul was even stronger than the soul of the Rebirth Martial Emperor. Perhaps, the owner that the soul belonged to was once even stronger than the Rebirth Martial Emperor. After that formidable soul vanished, this Devilseal tablet that held that soul entered into Duan Lingtian's possession and had always been stored in a corner of his spatial ring. If it wasn't for the incident today, Duan Lingtian would have almost forgotten it. Whoosh! With a command in his head, a broken stone tablet appeared in his hand. It was exactly the Devilseal tablet. I wonder what writing is on this Devilseal tablet. The Rebirth Martial Emperor that has experienced 2 lifetimes actually doesn't recognize this type of writing. Duan Lingtian shook his head and once again placed the Devilseal tablet back into his spatial ring. This won't do, I have to quickly change to another spatial ring, this spatial ring is too strange. When Duan Lingtian recalled what had happened in the space within his spatial ring, he felt his hairs stand on end, and he hurriedly took out another spatial ring and moved all the things within the old spatial ring into the newer spatial ring. As for the old spatial ring, hiss! Along with Duan Lingtian raising his hand, his grade 3 weapon flame appeared, and the spatial ring was quickly burnt into a pool of liquid by Duan Lingtian. With a thought, the liquid gradually transformed into a candlestick. After he casually placed the candlestick on the table, Duan Lingtian left his room. 663 Chapter 664, Levels of Spectating Area. Because the dynasty martial competition today was a battle between the young geniuses of the various empires, the Feng clan didn't attend in a large scale. When Duan Lingtian left the Feng clan estate, only Feng Wudao, Feng Tianwu, and Elder Kong were by his side. As for Grandma Shu, she instead stayed within the estate and didn't come along. After staying for over 10 days at Feng Wudao's estate, Duan Lingtian had obtained a certain level of understanding towards the situation in that estate, and he knew that Grandma Shu was an existence akin to a manager. Food and household affairs were normally managed by Grandma Shu. Uncle Feng, where's the Darken Dynasty's dynasty martial competition being held? Duan Lingtian, who flew in the air, looked at Feng Wudao by his side and asked. The Cage Battle Arena. Feng Wudao spoke slowly. Cage Battle Arena. Duan Lingtian's brows raised, and he was slightly surprised. The Darken Dynasty has a cage battle arena as well. Feng Wudao shook his head when he heard Duan Lingtian. The Darkin Dynasty's cage battle arena has existed since the existence of the Darkin Dynasty. It can be said that the history of the cage battle arena is the history of the Darkin Dynasty. Presently, some empires, imperial kingdoms, and kingdoms under the Darkin Dynasty had cage battle arenas established in their imperial cities, and they are all copied from the Darkin Dynasty. Feng Wudao finished with explaining with a single breath. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding. He was wondering earlier why the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom had a cage battle arena and this Darkin Dynasty actually had a cage battle arena as well. So it turned out that the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's cage battle arena was a copy. So in this way, the Darkin Dynasty's cage battle arena is probably backed by the imperial family. Duan Lingtian asked. As far as he was concerned, since the cage battle arena could be passed down to such an extent, it was presumably relying on an immovable mountain, and that mountain could only be the imperial family. Exactly, Feng Wudao replied, and he confirmed Duan Lingtian's guess. The Darkin Dynasty's cage battle arena, now, Duan Lingtian was slightly anticipating it. After all, to a certain extent, the scale of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's cage battle arena had shocked Duan Lingtian all those years ago. The Darkin Dynasty's cage battle arena would undoubtedly be even more shocking. All along the way, Duan Lingtian was able to see many people flying over here as well. These people were obviously coming to watch the show. Didn't you say yesterday that you weren't interested in coming because it's only the first phase of the Dynasty Martial competition today? A middle-aged man that flashed past Duan Lingtian's side laughed as he looked at the companion by his side. Since I have nothing else to do, it isn't bad to come witness the show of the young geniuses of the various empires, said the latter. Today will surely not be as interesting as tomorrow, it's even to the extent that, there are probably not even a few 7th level void initiation stage young geniuses today. The former shook his head. Of course, this first phase of the Dynasty Martial competition is only a warm-up, and the interesting show starts tomorrow, said the latter. Duan Lingtian heard many similar discussions all along the way. Brother Duan, Elder Kong smiled as she looked at Duan Lingtian and spoke slowly. If it wasn't for you participating in the Dynasty Martial competition today, the eldest master, the young miss, and I might not come join in the fun at the cage battle arena today. Duan Lingtian nodded. This was something that wasn't surprising to him. Who were Feng Wudao and Elder Kong? The Dynasty Martial competition of a mere group of young geniuses from the empires were unable to draw their attention. As for Feng Tianwu, amongst all the young geniuses of the various empires, there were probably only a few people that could compare to her cultivation, and she naturally wouldn't be interested with the Dynasty Martial competition today. We've arrived. Not long after, Elder Kong's voice entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian noticed that an exceedingly spacious field had appeared in the distance, and it was more than 2 times the size of the cage battle arena in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. On this field was similarly an enormous cage that enveloped the field, and it caused one to be terrified by the sight of it. This is the Darkin Dynasty's cage battle arena, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and his gaze moved from the arena to the surroundings. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian realized that the most distinguishing feature of the Darkin Dynasty's cage battle arena wasn't the extremely spacious field, but the surrounding spectating area. When looked at from afar, the surrounding spectating area was divided into 3 levels. The lowest level was like the spectating area in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's cage battle arena, and it was like the seating in the cinemas of Earth in his previous life. Of course, the seating in the cinemas faced a single direction, whereas, the spectating area here surrounded the entire cage battle arena. Presently, the surrounding spectating area were already almost filled with people, and when looked from afar, it looked like a dense patch of black. So many people. Duan Lingtian was surprised as he never imagined that the first phase of the Dynasty Martial competition would be able to draw so many people. At the edges of the cage battle arena stood many exceedingly enormous stone pillars. These stone pillars held up the 9 spectating areas that floated in midair. The seating on these spectating areas were comparatively few, and many seats were empty. These seats were of a higher class, and they were made with first-rate beast skin. Moreover, at the side of these spectating areas were many armored soldiers standing all around like numerous gods of defense. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian saw a few groups of people flashing past the sky in a formidable array, and in the end, they split up and descended onto the spectating areas that floated in midair. King Yang, Duan Lingtian's eyes were sharp and recognized the person in the lead of one of the groups of people. It was precisely the Darkstone Empire's King Yang. As for behind King Yang, the 2 old men followed him like a shadow, and another 9 young men followed behind the old men. These people weren't unfamiliar to Duan Lingtian, as they were the group of people that had come to the Darken Dynasty with him. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian saw that after King Yang indicated his status to the soldiers, he brought along the 11 people behind him to sit at a corner of the spectating area and occupied that area. These spectating areas belong to the second-class spectating area. Elder Kong stood by Duan Lingtian's side and explained to Duan Lingtian. During the dynasty martial competition this time, the representatives of the various empires and the young geniuses they brought over will be seated at these second-class spectating areas. Besides that, the representatives and the young geniuses brought over by the ordinary powers of the Darken Dynasty will also be seated here. Second-class spectating area. Duan Lingtian nodded and sighed rather emotionally in his heart. In this world, everything is divided by grade, and the strong always occupy the best things. In this way, that's the first-class spectating area. Duan Lingtian's gaze moved up along the stone pillars that shot into the sky and looked at the spectating areas that were even higher. The spectating areas here were similarly divided into 9, yet the seats in every single spectating area were extremely few, consisting of only a single row. The seating of this spectating area was undoubtedly even more luxurious, and when the seating at the second-class spectating area was compared with the seating at the first-class spectating area, it was simply like a place where beggars sat. Exactly, this is the first-class spectating area. Elder Kong nodded. Ordinarily speaking, this first-class spectating area is a place that only the higher-ups of the imperial family, our Feng clan, the Zhang clan, and the Yi clan are able to bring others to sit. Of course, the experts in the Darken Dynasty are numerous like the clouds, and some formidable independent martial artists and existences with special statuses, like Grade 4 weapons craftsmen, Grade 4 alchemists, and high-grade inscription masters are able to bring others up there as well. Elder Kong spoke slowly. Duan Lingtian nodded. Let's go. Feng Wudao called out to Duan Lingtian and the others before flying up and heading towards the first-class spectating area in the blink of an eye. At the same time, their figures drew the attention of many people. Who are they? They're actually ascending to the first-class spectating area. Some of the martial artists that sat in the third-class spectating area couldn't refrain from exclaiming in shock. They seem to be unfamiliar faces, I don't recognize them. Another person continued. Duan Lingtian. In the second-class spectating area, all the 12 people from the Darkstone Empire including King Yang had finally noticed Duan Lingtian. I truly never imagined that Duan Lingtian even had acquaintances in the Darken Dynasty. Moreover, the identities of those people are obviously extraordinary, especially that red-robed middle-aged man in the lead. At the same time that Su Li was surprised, he couldn't help but gasp. The instant he saw the red-robed middle-aged man, his heart couldn't help but shake, and it was as if the red-robed middle-aged man was a savage monster. This feeling, I've only felt it when facing Master and Martial Uncle Saber. Su Li was shocked in his heart. There's actually an existence that can compare to Master and Martial Uncle Saber in the Darken Dynasty. No wonder Duan Lingtian's improvement was so swift all along the way, so it turns out that he's acquainted with an expert like this. Now, Su Li thought that it was exactly because of obtaining this expert's assistance that Duan Lingtian possessed his shocking cultivation. If Duan Lingtian knew of Su Li's current thoughts, he would surely be speechless. At most, Feng Wudao had helped him comprehend wind concept a few days ago, and besides this, Feng Wudao didn't provide any more help towards his cultivation. Mo Zan and the other young geniuses were similarly shocked. Duan Lingtian followed behind Feng Wudao and descended into one of the first-class spectating areas. In next to no time, an armored soldier that stood on this spectating area bowed respectfully to Feng Wudao and Elder Kong. Lord Wudao, Elder Kong. Duan Lingtian clearly saw the reaction of the soldier earlier. After he saw Feng Wudao, the soldier's eyes obviously revealed a slightly dazed expression. But when he saw Elder Kong, it seemed as if he was suddenly enlightened, and not only had he recognized Elder Kong, he even guessed Feng Wudao's identity. Feng Wudao nodded lightly, and then brought Duan Lingtian along to sit at the side. Presently, in the 9 first-class spectating areas, only the spectating area with Duan Lingtian's group was occupied. Uncle Feng, I'll go over first. Duan Lingtian notified Feng Wudao and intended to join Kong Yang and the others. After all, he had to participate in the first phase of the dynasty martial competition today, and he was unable to purely be a spectator like Feng Wudao's group of 3. Go ahead, I'll ask Elder Kong to place more origin stones on you. Feng Wudao smiled. Origin stones? Duan Lingtian was stunned. Subsequently, through Elder Kong's explanation, Duan Lingtian found out that the wager established for the first-class spectating area wasn't gold and silver, but origin stones. Of course, it was low-grade origin stones. 664 Chapter 665, 5,000 low-grade origin stones. Uncle Feng, is there any limit to the betting in this cage battle arena? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. No, Feng Wudao shook his head, and then asked curiously. Could it be that you're asking this because you want to bet as well? But a bet of gold and silver has to be done in the other 2 spectating areas below. No, I'm not betting in gold and silver. Duan Lingtian shook his head, and then he contemplated for a moment before he raised his hand and a pile of low-grade origin stones appeared in his hand. A few thousand low-grade origin stones were held up like this by Duan Lingtian with his origin energy. It wasn't that he wanted to do this, but it was truly too many origin stones, and if he didn't use his origin energy to support them, he wouldn't be able to hold all of them even if he extended both his hands. For a time, Feng Wudao, Elder Kong, and Feng Tianwu were stunned as they looked at the origin stones in Duan Lingtian's hand. Tianwu, there are 5,000 low-grade origin stones here, help me place them on myself. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled, and with a raise of his hand, the 5,000 low-grade origin stones flew towards Tianwu and floated before her. Yes, big brother Duan. Feng Tianwu recovered from her shock and put away all the origin stones into her spatial ring. Low-grade origin stones weren't unfamiliar to her. But even she had at most a few tens of low-grade origin stones in her possessions. She believed that even if it was her father, he wouldn't be able to take out so many low-grade origin stones at a single time. We'll share the gains equally. Duan Lingtian smiled. Big brother Duan, I can't accept it, no matter how much the gain is, I'll give it all to you. Feng Tianwu shook her head and was unwilling to take advantage of Duan Lingtian. When he saw Feng Tianwu persisting, Duan Lingtian didn't continue persuading her. At any rate, Feng Tianwu had Feng Wudao standing behind her, so she presumably had no lack of low-grade origin stones. In the Darken Dynasty, even though mid-grade and high-grade spirit stones were rarely seen, but low-grade spirit stones were numerous. After all, the imperial family of the Darken Dynasty controlled a low-grade origin stone vein. Of course, guarding this ore vein wasn't something a mere imperial family was able to do, and it still had to rely on the assistance of the formidable powers like the Feng clan, Zhang clan, and Yi clan. So every time low-grade origin stones were mined, besides the imperial family obtaining a big portion, the other powers like the Feng clan would obtain a portion. The amount the Feng clan was able to obtain was merely inferior to the imperial family. As the eldest master of the Feng clan, an existence with extraordinary strength, Feng Wudao naturally had no lack of low-grade origin stones. You wouldn't be thinking of informing your superiors, right? Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's brows raised, and he looked at the nearby armor soldier and spoke with a low voice. Presently, the soldier was intending to leave. Obviously, he was intending to secretly deliver the information and ask them to reduce the payment rate for Duan Lingtian being victorious. Meanwhile, Elder Kong reacted to this, and he glanced coldly at the soldier and grunted. If you dare make another move, I'll kill you. Elder Kong's words caused the soldier's body to stiffen, and his face became ghastly pale. But he didn't dare get up to any little tricks. He knew clearly in his heart that with the status of this old man in the Darken Dynasty, killing him was as simple as crushing an ant. Lingtian, even I don't carry so many origin stones with me, where did you get them? Feng Wudao looked at Duan Lingtian and asked with slight surprise. Duan Lingtian withdrawing 5,000 low-grade origin stones in one go had shocked him as well. Many. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth lightly twitched when he heard Feng Wudao. He wondered that if Feng Wudao knew that besides a few thousand low-grade origin stones, there were also a few tens of mid-grade origin stones and a single high-grade origin stone in his spatial ring at this moment, what would Feng Wudao's expression be like? Of course, he didn't plan to tell Feng Wudao. Uncle Feng, I went wandering in the surroundings when I first arrived at the Darken Dynasty. Later on, I found a concealed cave in a remote mountain ridge. Duan Lingtian spoke at random and fabricated a bizarre experience. At that time, I noticed a skeleton and a spatial ring within that cave. Those origin stones are from that spatial ring. Big brother Duan, your luck is really good. Feng Tianwu spoke with surprise. Yes, a fortuitous encounter like this isn't something that anyone can chance upon. Brother Duan is a person with good luck as expected. All those years ago, you found the underwater abode. Now, you encountered the remains of a predecessor with an extraordinary background. Elder Kong sighed. As far as he was concerned, a person that possessed 5,000 low-grade origin stones in his spatial ring was surely of extraordinary background. Yeah, your luck isn't bad. Feng Wudao glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian, and it caused Duan Lingtian to feel slightly afraid of being found out. He was able to discern that Feng Wudao didn't quite believe what he said. Tianwu, I'll go join King Yang and the others. After notifying Feng Tianwu, Duan Lingtian flew out and headed towards the second-class spectating area and firmly descended onto the spectating area where King Yang and the others were, and he descended just before the seats of King Yang and the other. Meanwhile, many gazes descended onto Duan Lingtian. This young man had obviously come down from the first-class spectating area. Who exactly is he? He seems to be someone from an empire under our darkened dynasty, but he seems to have ascended the first-class spectating area earlier. Looks like he's acquainted with a distinguished figure of our darkened dynasty. It's probably like that, comma. The crowd of spectators at the third-class spectating area discussed animatedly, whereas, in the other second-class spectating areas, the young geniuses of representatives from the various empires looked at Duan Lingtian with astonished gazes now. When did the Darkstone Empire have such a figure? He's actually related to a distinguished figure of the darkened dynasty. If I defeat him, then wouldn't it be a great honor? I'll surely make him become my stepping stone, comma. At this moment, the young geniuses of the various empires looked at Duan Lingtian as if they were hunters looking at their prey, and it was as if they wished for nothing more than to enter the arena and defeat Duan Lingtian. King Yang. After he descended, Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he greeted King Yang. Duan Lingtian, come, sit here. King Yang gestured at Duan Lingtian to sit by his side. Presently, amongst the group of people from the Darkstone Empire, King Yang was sitting alone at the front. The two old men instead sat at the row behind him, whereas the row behind the two old men was where Su Li and the other young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire sat. I'll sit by Su Li's side. Duan Lingtian smiled to King Yang and flashed out to descend onto the empty seat by Su Li's side. King Yang didn't persist when he saw this. After he sat by Su Li's side, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force couldn't help but stretch out and envelop Su Li, and he quickly detected Su Li's cultivation. 8th level of the Void Initiation stage. As expected, Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart, and he wasn't surprised by this. The other day, he detected that Long Yun's cultivation has already broken through to the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage, so he guessed that Su Li's cultivation ought to have improved again. Now it would seem that his guess was correct. Su Li, how's your comprehension in sword concept? After he detected Su Li's cultivation, Duan Lingtian couldn't refrain from asking. Wouldn't you know when it's my turn to fight? Su Li smiled mysteriously. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Su Li is actually keeping me guessing. But when he thought about how he liked to keep people guessing as well, he couldn't help but shake his head. Could it be that this is retribution? Subsequently, Duan Lingtian's gaze started to flash past the numerous second-class spectating area, including our Darkstone Empire. There are a total of 17 empires that have arrived, but it seems that not all of them have arrived. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian saw many more people arriving at the second-class spectating area. Along with the passage of time, the people of the 31 empires had quickly gathered. Meanwhile, the people that arrived grew fewer and fewer. I wonder how many empires are there in total within the Darkened Dynasty. Duan Lingtian muttered to himself. There are a total of 36 empires in the Darkened Dynasty. Su Li heard Duan Lingtian's muttering and lightly smiled as he spoke. Su Li, you even know this? Duan Lingtian spoke curiously. Su Li smiled. Not only do I know of them, I've practically gone to all of them. Duan Lingtian was astonished, as he never imagined that Su Li had once gone to so many places. I presume it's that master of Su Li's that brought him to these places. Now Duan Lingtian was more and more interested towards Su Li's master. Su Li, has your master come today? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Today was the Dynasty Martial competition and Su Li would be participating to compete for the qualification to participate in the second phase of the Dynasty Martial competition. No, Su Li shook his head. Right, Duan Lingtian smiled. It's only the first phase of the Dynasty Martial competition today, and it will decide on the 30 strongest young geniuses of the various empires. With your current strength, I presume it's in the bag. Your master knows the outcome, so it isn't strange that he isn't coming. Su Li glanced at Duan Lingtian with astonishment. He never imagined that Duan Lingtian was so confident towards him. After all, he'd never revealed his current cultivation in public, and only he and his master knew about it. No, Su Li shook his head. Not only will master not be coming today, even if I pass through the first phase of the Dynasty Martial competition and obtain the qualification to participate in the second phase tomorrow, master will still not come. He isn't coming tomorrow either. This time, it was Duan Lingtian who was completely stunned. Could it be that Su Li's master isn't interested in the Dynasty Martial competition and even the martial competition of the 10 dynasties? Or perhaps, he feels that Su Li will surely obtain the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. So there was no need to come. The more he thought about it, the more Duan Lingtian was sure about it. Duan Lingtian, let's not talk about my master first. Earlier, that person that brought you up to the first-class spectating area seems to not be simple. Su Li glanced at Duan Lingtian and asked with deep meaning in his words. He is. Duan Lingtian nodded, and then he said, but no matter how extraordinary, I'm afraid he can't compare to that master of yours. After all, your master is an existence from the foreign lands. The words, foreign lands, possessed an absolute deterrent force in the various dynasties. Never had Su Li imagined that in the blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian had turned around the topic, and he shook his head helplessly and didn't ask any further. Otherwise, he didn't know to where Duan Lingtian would twist the topic to. 665 Chapter 666, Long Yun's Strength. Along with the passage of time, the representatives and young geniuses of the 36 empires that included the Darkstone Empire had arrived successively. For a time, people flowed about in the second-class spectating area of the cage battle arena, and it was filled with people. There were even the representatives and young geniuses of 3 more empires at the side of the spectating area that Duan Lingtian and group of people from the Darkstone Empire sat. King Yang, we haven't met for many years, have you been well? The representative of an empire that had just brought his group over sat near King Yang and took the initiative to greet him. This was an old man in gray clothes who looked old and shaky. His pair of muddy eyes were expressionless, and his entire body emitted an unfathomable aura. Senior Liu, King Yang lightly smiled as she looked at the gray-clothed old man. I've been well. I truly never imagined that you're leading the Holdwin Empire's group this time. Old people have to get out more often. The old man surnamed Liu replied with a smile. Subsequently, the old man's gaze flashed past the 10 young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire, and as he scanned every single one of them, there seemed to be a strand of bright light at the depths of his muddy gaze. This was something that Duan Lingtian saw clearly. King Yang, I heard that the number 1 young genius of your Darkstone Empire is called Mozan. I wonder which one he is. The old man asked curiously. Mozan, this is Senior Liu, and he's ranked in the top amongst the 5 great revered elders of the Holdwin Empire. King Yang turned around to look at Mozan in the 3rd row when he heard this. Senior Liu, Mozan looked at the old man and lightly nodded in greeting. Not bad, he's indeed a talented person. The old man praised. HMPH, number 1 young expert of the Darkstone Empire, as far as I'm concerned, all this has already become past tense now. A cold grunt broke the peaceful atmosphere at the scene. For a time, everyone that heard this including Duan Lingtian shot their gazes towards the source of the voice. At that place sat a young man with a cold expression. Long Yun. With just a glance, Duan Lingtian recognized this young man who was precisely Long Yun, who he'd long since known. Long Yun was from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom like him. He still remembered that when he met Long Yun for the first time all those years ago, it was during the martial competition of the 5 great sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. At that time, Long Yun was someone who was covered in the honor and glory given to him by a myriad of people. During the martial competition of the 5 great sect all those years ago, amongst the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, only Long Yun, the saber young master, had participated. At that time, practically everyone felt that Long Yun would obtain the honor of number 1 in the martial competition. Unfortunately, the outcome exceeded the expectations of everyone. Duan Lingtian was like a black horse that defeated Long Yun and obtained the honor of number 1 and had greatly lowered Long Yun's fame. It could be said that at that time, Duan Lingtian stepped on Long Yun to become famous in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Long Yun, 1 year ago, you didn't have the courage to battle me, could it be that you think you can defeat me now? Mo Zan's face sank slightly, and his eyes were suffused with a glow as he shot out a fierce gaze that slowly descended onto Long Yun. You don't have the qualifications to fight me now. Long Yun looked at Mo Zan and shook his head. Presently, amongst the young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire, only Duan Lingtian and Su Li have the qualifications to become my opponents. You are not good enough. His words wantonly trampled upon Mo Zan's dignity. You're courting death. Mo Zan abruptly stood up, his hair standing on end with rage. His eyes were suffused a crimson-red color as he stared fixedly at Long Yun, and the voice that he emitted was cold to the extreme. I've said it before, you don't have the qualifications. Long Yun shook his head. From beginning until the end, he never took Mo Zan seriously, and he did not take Mo Zan seriously. Perhaps he wasn't a match for Mo Zan a year ago. But now, with the help of his formidable master, his cultivation had undergone a tremendous change when compared to a year before. It was exactly as he'd said, amongst the group of young geniuses in the Darkstone Empire now, he only took Duan Lingtian and Su Li seriously. Die. Finally, Mo Zan was unable to restrain himself, and he shouted out explosively as he pounced towards Long Yun as if he'd transformed into a wild beast that had opened its bloody mouth with an intention of swallowing Long Yun directly. At the same time, along with the origin energy on Mo Zan's body skyrocketing, 7 ancient horned dragon silhouettes gradually condensed into form above him. When strands of violet-colored energy that contained numerous bolts of lightning striking within it appeared within his origin energy, another 5 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared in the sky above Mo Zan. 5th level of the Void Initiation Stage. 5th level Lightning Concept. This was Mo Zan's current strength. Swoosh. Mo Zan struck out with his fist, his origin energy and lightning concept following his fist like a shadow and giving rise to a wave of roiling waves of airflow that blew on the clothes of Duan Lingtian and the others to the point of fluttering in the air. This punch that carried the might of lightning whistles out like a shooting star that swept past the horizon and fiercely smashed towards Long Yun. Ignorant fool. When faced with Mo Zan's punch that approached menacingly, Long Yun still had disdain on his face. Suddenly, Long Yun made a move. Whoosh. With a raise of his hand, his palm formed a saber, and origin energy raged and bloomed atop his fist. Right at this instant, besides Duan Lingtian and Su Li who were still able to maintain their calm, everyone present stared with their eyes wide open, and they looked at the scene before them in disbelief. Heavens! What have I seen? At this moment, there were shockingly 10 ancient horned dragon silhouettes that had appeared in the sky above Long Yun. Merely using origin energy to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth to develop 10 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage. King Yong couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Never had he imagined that amongst the group of young geniuses he brought over, Long Yun, who was originally only able to be ranked as above average, would actually undergo such a tremendous change in his cultivation after a year. The expressions of everyone else was covered in shock as well. The first shock had barely subsided when a second rose. With a raise of his hand, the saber formed from his palm whistled out to intercept Mo Zan's fist strike that approached menacingly. The saber formed from his palm was only halfway to its target when it exploded out with a sharp and overbearing aura. In the sky, another 7 ancient horned dragon silhouettes condensed into form. 7th level saber concept. King Yong's brows raised, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. What exactly did this Long Yun encounter in the past year? Now, King Yong was practically able to be sure that during the past year, Long Yun had surely obtained a fortuitous encounter, and it was even a shocking fortuitous encounter that was rare to come by. What a joke! If it wasn't for a shocking fortuitous encounter, would a person that was mediocre a year ago be able to reveal a strength that shocked everyone? Long Yun's attack descended down while carrying the strength of 17 ancient horned dragons. When compared with Mo Zan's strength of 12 ancient horned dragons, it was stronger by 5 ancient horned dragons. The strength of these two people was utterly not on the same level. When he saw the 17 ancient horned dragon silhouettes in the sky above Long Yun, Mo Zan's expression had already gone pale. Now, even if his heart was filled with deep regret, he was irrevocably committed. As the saying goes, spilled water can't be gathered. At this moment, he even didn't have the time to withdraw his spirit weapon and could only collide head-on with Long Yun's attack. He was practically able to guess the outcome. Enough! Right when Mozan was in despair, King Yong shouted out with a low voice. In the next moment, King Yong made a move, easily dissolving the attacks of the two of them and shocking them back to their respective seats. Long Yun lightly sat down. Bang! Unlike him, Mozan fiercely sat back on his seat, and his forehead broke out in cold sweat. At that instant earlier, he felt death was so close, and it was the first time in his life that he felt the threat of death. Futile effort. Right at this moment, Long Yun's disdainful voice entered into Mozan's ears, causing Mozan to seem as if he was struck by lightning, and his face instantly flushed red. But he just happened to have no way of retort. After all, he was indeed inferior to Long Yun. For a time, he felt ashamed and resentful. Although he didn't look at the gazes that the surrounding people shot onto him, he was able to guess that there was surely numerous gazes of ridicule. King Yong. Finally, Mozan lowered his head and took a deep breath before saying to King Yong, "I withdraw from the dynasty martial competition this time." Withdrawal. Although Mozan's speech was short, it was resolute and decisive. This Mozan wouldn't be unable to tolerate such a small blow, right? Duan Lingtian was stunned. Meanwhile, Mozan's figure flashed to transform into a swift flowing light that left the second-class spectating area before charging into the sky and vanishing in the horizon. As soon as Mozan left, the people present returned to their senses, and they shook their heads. No one had expected that Mozan would be unable to accept defeat to this extent. King Yong, looks like the #1 expert of your Darkstone Empire isn't really the strongest young genius of your Darkstone Empire. The old man surnamed Lu looked at King Yong and sighed. Mozan's departure caused King Yong to be stunned, and he recovered from his shock at this moment when he heard the old man. Even I never imagined that Long Yun would be able to possess such a cultivation in a short period of a single year. Long Yun's change was something that King Yong has never expected. Earlier, he said that amongst the young geniuses of your Darkstone Empire, only Duan Lingtian and Su Li have the qualifications to be his opponent. The old man said with surprise, "King Yong, your Darkstone Empire has really concealed your strength deeply. Looks like besides this person, there are another 2 more young geniuses in your Darkstone Empire that are stronger than the so-called young expert, Mozan, of your Darkstone Empire. I wonder who those 2 are." As the old man finished speaking, his tone was filled with interest. The group of Holdwin Empire young geniuses behind the old man recovered from the shock they experienced from the scene before as well, and they sized up the remaining 8 young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire with interest. Obviously, they were extremely curious as to who that Duan Lingtian and Su Li were. In next to no time, they followed the gazes of the other 6 young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire to obtain the answer they wanted. So young. When their gazes descended onto the violet-clothed young man and red-clothed young man that sat together, they were flabbergasted. Aren't they a little too young? Amongst the 2 people before them, the red-clothed young man ought to be almost 30, whereas, the violet-clothed young man was only around 25, no matter how they looked at him. 666 Chapter 667, Command Token No. 32. It was these 2 young men that were taken to be true opponents by that young genius of the Darkstone Empire that was at the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage and comprehended 7th Saber concept. They were slightly unable to believe it. After all, if it was according to this, then wouldn't these 2 young men be existences at the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage or above? Actually, it wasn't just the group of young geniuses from Holdwin Empire that didn't believe it, even the other 6 young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire weren't willing to believe it. Long Yun possessing the strength to crush Mozan after a single year had already caused them to be shocked. If it was according to what Long Yun said, then wouldn't it mean that Duan Lingtian and Su Li's strengths were sufficient to crush Mozan as well? In this way, wasn't the #1 expert of their Darkstone Empire too worthless? In merely a single year, he was completely surpassed by 3 people that were entirely inferior to him a year ago. Duan Lingtian, Su Li, actually, even King Yong didn't dare believe it. If it was just Duan Lingtian, he wouldn't doubt it so much. But when coupled with Su Li, it caused him to be slightly unsure. Swoosh! Suddenly, a wave of wind howls that were ear-piercing flashed out from the distance. At the same time, a figure stood in the sky above the cage battle arena. Instantly, the group of people from the Darkstone Empire and Holdwin Empire had their gazes drawn over. The sky above the cage battle arena usually prohibited martial artists from standing there in midair. Only members of the cage battle arena and members of the Darkin dynasty's imperial family could stand in the sky above the arena. Presently, the person that stood in the sky above the cage battle arena was a white-clothed young man. The young man was around the age of 35, with a cold appearance and eyebrows that slanted upwards, and he possessed a graceful bearing. He's the person that's presiding over the dynasty martial competition. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. How young? Actually, it wasn't just Duan Lingtian that was surprised, even the representatives and young geniuses of the various empires and the spectators sitting at the third-class spectating area were shocked by the white-clothed young man's age. After all, the people that presided over the cage battle arena in the past were at least middle-aged men. Only a host with a formidable strength was able to deter the slaves and demon beasts that were undergoing cage battles, whereas, one's strength was matched with an old age to a certain extent. I welcome the representatives and young geniuses of the 36 empires to our Darkin dynasty's dynasty martial competition. I'm the host for the first phase of the selection today. The white-clothed young man had a cold expression as he spoke slowly. Subsequently, the white-clothed young man changed his tone, and he went straight to the point, directly speaking of the objective of the dynasty martial competition being held today. All in all, the final objective of the dynasty martial competition held today was to decide on the most outstanding 30 young geniuses from the 360 young geniuses of the 36 empires. These 30 young geniuses would converge with the young geniuses of the Darkin dynasty tomorrow and compete for the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. The others ought to have known these rules long ago, right? Duan Lingtian noticed that the representatives and young geniuses of the various empires seated at the second-class spectating area weren't surprised when they heard the white-clothed young man. In next to no time, the white-clothed young man started introducing the specific rules of the martial competition. Duan Lingtian listened seriously. The rules for the dynasty martial competition today are extremely simple. The 360 young geniuses will each draw a numbered command token that belongs to them and undergo advancement selection according to the order on these command tokens. Due to the amount of people, we'll hold 10 battles at the same time at the beginning. Besides that, there will be someone specially assigned to record the outcome of each battle. The white-clothed young man had just spoken up to there when 10 figures flew up from below and stood behind him. These were 10 middle-aged men with expressionless faces, as if they were 10 statues. Obviously, these people were in charge of recording the results of the battles. The first round of selection will eliminate half the people, and the second round of selection will once again eliminate half of the people remaining. At that time, only 90 people will remain. After the 90 people are decided, the rules will change once again. If a young genius with a good strength was eliminated due to having bad luck and felt disgruntled, then you'll be given a chance in the end, and you'll still have the chance to obtain one of the final 30 positions. The white-clothed young man finished speaking in one go. Subsequently, it was time to draw the command tokens. Swoosh, 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 9 swift figures flew into the sky and respectively descended onto one of the second-class spectating areas. These were 9 young men with a wide wooden tray in their hands, and the wooden tray was covered with 40 command tokens that were made from metal. These command tokens were facing downwards, with their backs facing up, and they look the same from their appearance. Looks like the drawing of command tokens requires us to choose a command token ourselves, whereas, these command tokens have completely different numbers on them. Su Li's voice entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian nodded. Long ago when the young man carrying the wooden tray had just descended to their second-class spectating area, his spiritual force had already silently stretched out to cover the command tokens on the wooden tray. Although Duan Lingtian's spiritual force couldn't be used as an eye, he was still able to use his spiritual force to detect the grooves inscribed on the command token and determine the number inscribed on them. The numbers of these 40 command tokens are actually random. There's a number 3 command token, a number 52 command token, and a number 327 command token. There isn't the slightest pattern to them. Now, Duan Lingtian was practically able to confirm that the command tokens on the wooden trays in the hands of the 9 young men had been jumbled up, and there was no pattern to follow. For example, the young man that arrived at the second-class spectating area Duan Lingtian and the others were it only possessed a single command token number 3, with a number before number 10 amongst the 40 command tokens on the wooden tray. No, 1, number 2, and number 4 to number 9 were all not on the wooden tray. The young geniuses of a total of 4 empires were at the spectating area Duan Lingtian was at, and the total of 40 people perfectly corresponded to the 40 command tokens. The young man first walked over to Duan Lingtian's side, and the 9 young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire were the first to draw their command tokens. If your empire doesn't have enough people, then representative, please draw the lot in the place of the 10th young genius. Later on, when it's the turn of the command token that representative holds, the person that's going against this command token's possessor will be automatically advanced to the next round. The young man that held the tray arrived by King Yong's side and spoke to King Yong. Obviously, he knew of the matter that one of the young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire had left. All right, King Yong nodded, and then he raised his hand with an intention of drawing a command token. Wait, Duan Lingtian called out to King Yong. King Yong looked at Duan Lingtian with a bewildered and puzzled expression. Duan Lingtian, you. Big brother. Duan Lingtian looked at the young man that held the wooden tray and asked with a light smile. After we draw the command tokens, how will the advancement selection battles be carried out? The possessor of command token number 1 will go against the possessor of command token number 2, the possessor of command token number 3 will go against the possessor of command token number 4, and so on and so forth. In the end, the possessor of command token number 359 will go against the possessor of command token No. 360. The young man explained with extreme patience. I understand. Duan Lingtian nodded and then looked at King Yong as he said via voice transmission, King Yong, please choose the 5th command token from the left amongst the row of command tokens closest to you. King Yong couldn't help but be stunned when he heard this, as he didn't know why Duan Lingtian would ask him to choose that command token. But it was the same to him no matter which command token he chose. After all, no matter which command token he chose, it would help the possessor of another command token to advance. For example, if he chose command token number 1, then the possessor of command token number 2 would win without a battle in advance, whereas, if he drew command token number 28, then the possessor of command token number 27 would advance. Whoosh! King Rong raised his hand and drew the command token that Duan Lingtian spoke of. Meanwhile, the group of young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire clearly saw that the command token in King Yong's hand was command token No. 31. Subsequently, the group of Darkstone Empire young geniuses started to choose their command tokens. After everyone started choosing, Duan Lingtian and Su Li joined them, and Duan Lingtian's gaze was firmly locked onto one of the command tokens now. That command token was situated at the corner and no one showed interest to it. Duan Lingtian only slowly turned over the command token that belonged to him after the other 8 young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire had drawn their command tokens. As soon as Duan Lingtian turned over his command token, the young man that held the tray was stunned. King Yong was stunned as well. The remaining 8 young geniuses were all stunned. Heavens! What have I seen? 3:32. As Su Li looked at the command token in Duan Lingtian's hand and looked at the command token in King Yong's hand, he couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Duan Lingtian, your luck is really not bad, as you're able to advance directly in the first round. The command token in King Yong's hand was considered to be the possession of Mo Zan who'd left. No matter who it was, so long as they encountered Mo Zan's command token, they would be able to obtain the privilege of advancing directly, and now, this privilege was obtained by Duan Lingtian. No. 32. The command token in King Yong's hand was No. 31. Under numerous gazes of envy, Duan Lingtian put away the number 32 command token. Meanwhile, a surprised voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ear in a timely manner. Duan Lingtian, you, how did you know? This voice transmission belonged exactly to King Yong. Earlier, even though King Yong felt it was strange when Duan Lingtian asked him to choose that command token, he didn't know why Duan Lingtian wanted to do that. Only when King Yong saw the command token number 32 that Duan Lingtian drew did he realize all of this was something Duan Lingtian had planned. Or perhaps, Duan Lingtian knew the numbers beneath these command tokens beforehand. Intuition, said Duan Lingtian via voice transmission. Intuition. The corners of King Yong's mouth twitched and he didn't believe the nonsense Duan Lingtian spoke. 667 Chapter 668, The Dynasty Martial Competition begins. What a joke, could this be sensed by intuition? At this moment, Duan Lingtian naturally perceived King Yong didn't believe him, yet he didn't make any further explanation. In fact, Duan Lingtian naturally didn't rely on intuition to know that King Yong would obtain the number 32 command token, and he didn't rely on intuition to just happen to obtain the number 31 command token. Early on, when the young man holding the wooden tray has ascended the spectating area Duan Lingtian was seated at, his spiritual force had already stretched out to check the numbers on the 40 command tokens. Only 2 of the command tokens on the tray were successive to each other, and it was number 31 and no 32. It was precisely because of this that all the subsequent events had happened. He's asked King Yong to draw the number 31 command token, and he instead drew the number 32 command token. So long as it's an inscription master that's skilled in controlling spiritual force, then practically any inscription master is capable of detecting the numbers on these command tokens that are covered, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Because of this, he didn't think he was extraordinary in any way. Duan Lingtian, could it be that you're an inscription master? In next to no time, a shocked voice sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ear, and it was exactly the voice transmission of King Yong. Obviously, King Yong had recovered from his earlier surprise and was already able to make an accurate judgment. This time, Duan Lingtian didn't continue keeping him guessing and nodded lightly. This caused King Yong to be unable to refrain from shaking his head and sighing, and then he sent a voice transmission and said, "Since you're able to use your spiritual force to detect the numbers on these command tokens, it's sufficient to show that you're extremely skilled in the control of your spiritual force, and your attainments in the art of inscription are high. Actually, your natural talent in the martial Tao is shocking, so why waste your time on studying the art of inscriptions? If you didn't study the art of inscription, then your strength now would surely be even stronger." As he finished speaking, King Yong seemed to be slightly regretful. As far as he was concerned, since Duan Lingtian's attainments in the art of inscriptions was high, it indirectly represented that Duan Lingtian had put painstaking effort into this and had wasted much time on it. If Duan Lingtian was able to use this time that he'd wasted on his cultivation, then Duan Lingtian's strength would surely be even stronger. Duan Lingtian naturally noticed the regret that King Yong revealed towards him, and he only shook his head and smiled towards this. Only he himself knew that his attainments in the art of inscriptions was inherited from the rebirth martial emperor, and he'd never wasted any time on it. "Duan Lingtian, I thought that I'd be able to see you fight first, now it would seem that it isn't going to happen." Su Li sat by Duan Lingtian's side and shook his head. The command token he drew was no. 237, "My luck's good, what can I say?" Duan Lingtian shrugged and spoke shamelessly, and he neither went red with shame nor breathed heavily. It was as if it truly was because of his luck being good that he just happened to draw command token number 32. But Su Li didn't doubt it. After all, Su Li didn't know that Duan Lingtian had asked King Yong to draw command token number 31 earlier. After a short moment, all 360 young geniuses of the 36 empires had drawn the command token that belonged to themselves. These command tokens indicated a unique number. "Now, the young geniuses with command token number 1 to number 20, please enter the arena." In the sky above the arena, the white-clothed young man stood there, his appeared cold as before as he spoke with a deep voice. Meanwhile, the 10 middle-aged men behind him instantly transformed into numerous flowing lights, and when they appeared once more, they were already spread out in the sky above the various areas of the cage battle arena. The 10 of them had intentionally spread apart by quite a distance. "Everyone, I'll be going first." Amongst the group of young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire, someone had acquired command token number 3, and he'd notified Duan Lingtian and the others now before flying out. This young genius was someone Duan Lingtian had an impression of. He was Gao Yuhai that had fought Long Yun that day, and the weapon in his possession was a spirit fan. 1 year ago, he was a martial artist at the 8th level of the void prying stage, and he'd comprehended advanced saber force. He has actually broken through to the 1st level of the void initiation stage after a year. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as he looked at Gao Yuhai's figure. Early on when Gao Yuhai had just spoke out, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force had already enveloped him like a shadow, causing his cultivation to be unable to escape Duan Lingtian's detection. 1st level of the void initiation stage. Amongst the young geniuses of the various empires, although it wasn't to the extent of being at the bottom, it was below average. Earlier, Duan Lingtian had intentionally detected the cultivation of the young geniuses of many empires. Amongst them, the weakest were some 9th level void prying stage martial artists. 9th level of the void initiation stage, participating in the dynasty martial competition is merely a formality for them. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Meanwhile, the other 19 young geniuses had flashed out from their respective spectating area and gathered with Gao Yuhai. The possessors of command token number 1 and number 2, come over here. In next to no time, one of the middle-aged men in charge of recording the results of the battle spoke out with a voice that wasn't loud, yet it clearly entered the ears of the 20 young geniuses that had entered the arena. Instantly, 2 young geniuses swiftly arrived near the middle-aged man. The possessors of command token number 3 and number 4, come over here. Subsequently, another person spoke out. In next to no time, Gao Yuhai and another young genius arrived beside another middle-aged man in charge of recording the results of the battle. The remaining 16 young geniuses had taken their respective places as well. The 20 young geniuses were split into groups of 2 that stood in confrontation with each other. Near every single group of young genius standing in confrontation was a middle-aged man standing with a solemn expression, and the middle-aged man played the role of witness. The battle would start at any moment. I was originally worried that if the battles were slowly carried out one by one, then the time of a single day would utterly not be enough for 360 people. Now, these 10 battles carried out together is greatly efficient. Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart as he looked at the 20 young geniuses that stood in confrontation. Begin. Meanwhile, the white-clothed young man that stood in the sky at the center of the arena abruptly shouted out with a light voice. Instantly, the young geniuses of the various empires that were spread into 10 areas attacked out while utilizing all their ability. Swoosh, 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 numerous figures that were exceedingly swift intersected each other. Everywhere they passed, origin energy skyrocketed as concept followed them like shadows, and their spirit weapons fiercely smashed towards their opponents. In merely a single move, there were 6 people that admitted defeat. The strengths of these 6 people had been completely surpassed by their opponents, and they utterly had no room for resistance. If they didn't admit defeat, they would surely suffer heavy injuries and even lose their lives. After all, on a stage like the Dynasty Martial competition, even if they were killed, they would have died for nothing. After the 6 people admitted defeat, another 6 people advanced, whereas the remaining 8 people were still fighting like raging fire. 8 people divided into 4 groups were locked in battle. Every 2 people who were locked in battle had comparable strengths, and they were on par and were in a deadlock for a time. Amongst them was the Darkstone Empire's Gao Yuhai. Presently, Gao Yuhai relied on the grade 5 spirit weapon in his possession to utilize his entire origin energy and first-level saber concept to fight intensely with his opponent. His opponent was similarly a first-level void initiation stage martial artist who possessed a grade 5 spirit weapon and first-level concept, causing his opponent's strength to not be inferior to him. But although their strengths were on par, it was a fight of combat experience and various skills at a time like this. With a raise of his hand, the grade 5 spirit fan in Gao Yuhai's hand flew out to transform into fan-shaped saber light that covered the sky and enveloped towards his opponent. Whoosh! In the hand of Gao Yuhai's opponent, a grade 5 spirit spear suddenly shook as swift spear images swept out like shadows to intercept the fan-shaped saber lights that covered the sky. Bang, 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 every time the grade 5 spirit sword flashed out, there would be a fan-shaped saber light that was destroyed. But unfortunately, Gao Yuhai was obviously prepared, and at the instant when the fan-shaped saber lights were completely obliterated by his opponent and his opponent revealed a complacent smile, he struck out swiftly like a bolt of lightning. Swoosh! Along with Gao Yuhai's figure shaking, he seemed to have transformed into a saber that flashed directly towards his opponent, and the spirit fan in his hand even emitted a wave of ear-piercing sounds from tearing through the sky. What a pity, this person's strength isn't inferior to Gao Yuhai. When he saw Gao Yuhai was about to defeat his opponent, Duan Lingtian shook his head and felt pity for Gao Yuhai's opponent. Gao Yuhai's opponent had given Gao Yuhai an opportunity to take advantage of because of his carelessness. Number 3 is victorious. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man that was in charge of recording the outcome of the battle between Gao Yuhai and his opponent spoke out with a cold and indifferent voice. At the same time, a paper and brush appeared in his hand as he started to record the outcome. It was a good match. Gao Yuhai, who'd blasted his opponent flying with his fan at the critical moment, smiled lightly to his opponent and nodded. Thank you for showing mercy. Gao Yuhai's opponent replied sincerely. Obviously, he knew clearly that if it wasn't for Gao Yuhai changing his attack to an attack using the side of the fan in a timely manner, he'd have already died under Gao Yuhai's fan, and not only be injured internally. Compared with Gao Yuhai showing mercy, the other 6 people were completely different. 6 people that were equally matched had bloodshot eyes as they fought. In the end, 2 died and 1 was heavily injured. The other 3 people that obtained victory were more or less injured slightly. Not bad. When he saw Gao Yuhai returning victorious and bringing honor to the Darkstone Empire, King Yong nodded with satisfaction. Gao Yuhai's character isn't bad. Duan Lingtian praised in his heart as he looked at Gao Yuhai return to his seat. Young geniuses that have drawn command token number 21 to number 40, enter the arena. Meanwhile, the white-clothed young man spoke out once more. It's my turn. Duan Lingtian smiled. Even though he knew that he utterly had no opponent for this battle, he still flew up to converge with the other 18 young geniuses. Subsequently, the 10 middle-aged men started calling them over to their sides. The possessor of command token number 31 and number 32, come here. When a middle-aged man's voice sounded out, Duan Lingtian headed over directly. When he saw only Duan Lingtian come over and the remaining young geniuses had already taken their places, the middle-aged man frowned. Where's the other person? What's your number? Subsequently, the middle-aged man looked at Duan Lingtian and asked. 668 Chapter 669, The White-Clothed Young Man's Ability. No, 32, Duan Lingtian replied. The middle-aged man nodded and then he looked into the surroundings as his voice transmitted out. Where's the possessor of command token number 31? Along with the middle-aged man speaking out, the third-class spectating area went into an uproar. There's someone who isn't entering the arena to battle. It's all right to go in and admit defeat. Exactly. Moreover, this young man that possesses the number 32 command token might be a weakling. Many spectators discussed animatedly. Swoosh. Right at this moment, a young man dressed as a worker of the cage battle arena flashed over and arrived by the side of the middle-aged man in the blink of an eye. Lord, a young genius from the Darkstone Empire left at the last moment. The representative of the Darkstone Empire drew a command token in his place, and it's precisely no. 31, the young man explained. The middle-aged man came to an understanding, and then he looked at Duan Lingtian. Number 32, since the possessor of command token number 31 isn't present, you advance in this battle. Duan Lingtian, who was prepared for this long ago, wasn't surprised in the slightest, and he directly flew off. Only now did the group of spectators in the third-class spectating area understand what was going on. So that's how it is. This young man's luck is really good. Yeah, otherwise, based on his age, he would have probably been eliminated in the first battle. Yet now he has instead directly advanced. Many spectators discussed. Their words didn't think Duan Lingtian was really strong and only felt that Duan Lingtian's luck was exceptionally good. While Duan Lingtian returned to his seat, the white-clothed young man spoke once more. Begin. Subsequently, the other 18 young geniuses started to battle intensely. Some of them admitted defeat, whereas, another portion of them fought to the bitter end. Big Brother Duan actually advanced automatically. His luck is really good. In the first-class spectating area, Feng Tianwu's beautiful face was covered in shock. Young miss, it might not be luck. Elder Kong shook his head. As an inscription master as well, he naturally knew of Duan Lingtian's extraordinary ability in controlling his spiritual force, and Elder Kong vaguely guessed all of this was done intentionally by Duan Lingtian. Feng Tianwu had a puzzled expression as she looked at Elder Kong with a bewildered expression. Young miss, don't forget, Brother Lingtian is also an outstanding inscription master, and as an outstanding inscription master, it would be extremely easy for him to see through the numbers on the command tokens by relying on his spiritual force and choose the command token that he wanted. Elder Kong explained slowly. Grandpa Kong, what you mean is, Big Brother Duan intentionally chose the command token that could automatically advance. Feng Tianwu wasn't stupid, and after Elder Kong's reminder, she instantly reacted to what had happened. Elder Kong nodded. Duan Lingtian naturally didn't know that his little tricks were already seen through by Elder Kong. Presently, Duan Lingtian had returned to sit by Su Li's side, and he silently gazed at the sky above the cage battle arena. There were 3 groups of young geniuses that were battling intensely. For the sake of winning one of the 30 positions in the first phase of the Dynasty Martial competition today, all of these young geniuses were exerting their entire strengths and struggling desperately. Bang! In next to no time, a young genius was heavily injured, and his opponent obtained the final victory. Not long after, another young genius was killed and became the stepping stone of his opponent. For a time, only two people battling fiercely remained. These two people had always been well matched in strength and couldn't decide on a victor. But up until now, only the two of them were locked in combat in the sky above the cage battle arena, and the silent surroundings brought an unusual feeling to them. In next to no time, one of them was slightly distracted, whereas, the consequence of becoming distracted was being directly defeated by the other person. At this time, another 10 people advanced from the possessors of command token number 21 to no. 40. The dynasty martial competition still continued on, and the young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire entered the arena one by one. In next to no time, Long Yun entered the arena as well. Long Yun's opponent was a young man that carried a slightly arrogant expression from the beginning until the end. This young genius boasted shamelessly at first glance of Long Yun. "Kid, you look to be a little over 30, right? If you're sensible then quickly admit defeat and go home to have some milk." The young genius's voice wasn't soft, yet it spread out to the entire cage battle arena. Instantly, the people present shot strange gazes at Long Yun. "Looks like this person's opponent is strong. We can see from his arrogant words that if he doesn't have some skill, would he dare humiliate another like this? But, when compared to his opponent, he's indeed much younger. Needless to say, his composure isn't bad, as he's able to maintain his calm even until now." The group of spectators in the third-class spectating area discussed animatedly. Many people even admired Long Yun's composure. Only Duan Lingtian and the other people on the second-class spectating area he was on had a different atmosphere. Practically everyone on this second-class spectating area had seen Long Yun's strength with their own two eyes. 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage. 7th level Saber Concept. Up until now, a martial artist at the 7th level Void Initiation Stage or above hadn't appeared amongst the young geniuses of the various empires, nor were there martial artists that had comprehended 7th level concept. It could be said that Long Yun was the young genius with the strongest strength that had entered the arena up until now. But this fact was only known by all the people present on the spectating area where Duan Lingtian was. Long Yun's opponent was obviously from another spectating area and didn't notice the scene of Long Yun revealing his 7th level Void Initiation Stage strength to crush the 5th level Void Initiation Stage Mozan and force Mozan to give up on participating in the Dynasty Martial competition. For a time, everyone on the spectating area Duan Lingtian sat and looked at Long Yun's opponent with gazes of pity. Although Long Yun appeared to be extremely composed and seemed as if he didn't hear the insulting words of his opponent, all of them could perceive that Long Yun's heart had probably long since been filled with flames of rage. Long Yun was only waiting for a chance to let his flames of rage ravage his opponent. "I only hope that you can walk the walk, don't be unable to receive a single strike of mine." Long Yun looked at his opponent and spoke indifferently. "What a joke." Long Yun's opponent grunted coldly with disdain, and then his body started being suffused with vast origin energy. Whoosh! In the sky, 8 ancient horned dragon silhouettes condensed into form and revealed his cultivation. 6th level of the Void Initiation Stage. Instantly, no matter if it was the spectators in the third-class spectating area or the various representatives and young geniuses from the empires in the second-class spectating area, all of them exclaimed in surprise. After all, only one 6th level Void Initiation Stage young genius had appeared before this, and that young genius had merely used a single move to defeat his opponent and advance smoothly. No wonder he was so arrogant earlier, and even didn't hesitate to humiliate his opponent, so it turns out that he's actually a 6th level Void Initiation Stage martial artist. In the Dynasty Martial competition of today, a 6th level Void Initiation Stage martial artist is already considered to be a rare expert. It's even to the extent that it's practically confirmed that he'll obtain one of the final 30 positions today. If his opponent doesn't admit defeat now, then he's probably going to be struck with misfortune once the battle really begins. I think that his opponent will admit defeat right away. Many people in the third class and second class spectating areas whispered in discussion and couldn't refrain from guessing. Unfortunately, they quickly realized that they were wrong. When faced with the cultivation revealed by his opponent, Long Yun's expression remained unchanged, and he stood there in the sky unmoving like a mountain, without the slightest intention to admit defeat. "Begin." Right at this moment, the white-clothed young man spoke out. But, at this moment, the other 18 young geniuses had a rare moment of not fighting, and their gazes had instead descended onto Long Yun and Long Yun's opponent. "Kid, since you're not admitting defeat, then I'll send you to hell right now." Long Yun's opponent revealed an arrogant smile as he flashed out, and he seemed to have transformed into a gust of wind that swept towards Long Yun. In the sky, another 10 ancient horned dragon silhouettes condensed into form. Whoosh! The Grade 5 spirit weapon utilized by Long Yun's opponent was a rare sledgehammer, and the sledgehammer swiftly tore through to sky like a cannonball, and it seemed to carry unparalleled might. Bang! The sledgehammer smashed down at Long Yun as if it wanted to smash Long Yun into a meat biscuit. Long Yun is going to make a move, said Su Li to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded, as he's noticed the slight movements on Long Yun's hand as well. They're utterly not on the same level. Duan Lingtian shook his head. As far as he was concerned, this battle before him was without suspense. But, not everyone thought the same way as Duan Lingtian, and many people felt that it would be difficult for Long Yun to escape death. Now, even if he wants to admit defeat, he wouldn't be in time. Sometimes, pride can cause one to lose one's life. Many people shook their heads, and some of them even couldn't refrain from closing their eyes. It isn't certain who will go to hell yet. Suddenly, Long Yun's chilly voice sounded out. Right when most people were stunned by this, Long Yun moved. Origin energy instantly skyrocketed atop Long Yun's body, and in the next moment, he seemed to have formed into an enormous saber that tore through the sky and easily avoided the sledgehammer of his opponent that smashed towards him. Die! Subsequently, Long Yun shouted out lightning and he'd already arrived above his opponent. Suddenly, a spirit saber appeared in Long Yun's hand, and it instantly bloomed into an extremely sharp saber light that descended menacingly towards his opponent. Kacha! Long Yun's opponent was chopped into two from top to bottom, and blood sprayed out all over the entire sky. HMPH. Right at this moment, the white-clothed young man that was in charge of presiding over the dynasty martial competition grunted in a low voice, and with a raise of his hand, wind whistled out from his palm while carrying a shocking wave of heat. It was origin energy that covered the sky and carried along formidable fire concept that tore through the sky as it swept out and burned Long Yun's opponent's mangled corpse and the blood that covered the sky into ash. The white-clothed young man's movement was swift like a bolt of lightning, and the ancient horned dragon silhouettes above him weren't able to condense into form before dispersing. 9th level void initiation stage. 9th level fire concept. As he looked at the white-clothed young man, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but gasp. If nothing unexpected happens, then he's probably one of the young geniuses that will be participating in the dynasty martial competition tomorrow. Duan Lingtian guessed in his heart. 669 Chapter 670, Second Round. Most importantly, he's a member of the Darken Dynasty's imperial family. This time, he's surely amongst the 3 people recommended by the imperial family. The more Duan Lingtian thought, the surer he was. But what the people present noticed was different from what Duan Lingtian noticed. Numerous gazes descended onto Long Yun, and the astonishment from the beginning until the shock at the end, it revealed their surprise towards Long Yun. Or perhaps, at that instant earlier, they'd gotten to know Long Yun once again. 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage. He's actually a 7th level Void Initiation Stage martial artist. I truly never imagined. His strength is actually so strong. I was originally thinking that he would be crushed to death by his opponent's hammer strike. It's simply unexpected. Who would have thought that he's actually a 7th level Void Initiation Stage martial artist? His opponent is unfortunate as well. Perhaps, that person thought that since he was a 6th level of the Void Initiation Stage martial artist, he could look down on others. But unexpectedly, he'd actually kicked on such a hard plate of steel. Needless to say, sometimes, some things are fated. No matter if it was the spectators in the 3rd class or the 2nd class spectating area, many people shook their heads and sighed emotionally. Number 73 is victorious. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man that was in charge of recording Long Yun's results recovered from his shock and announced. Long Yun advanced. When Long Yun returned to the 2nd class spectating area, many surrounding spectators looked at him with gazes of reverence. Of course, there were also some that looked hatefully at him. In another 2nd class spectating area, the representative of an empire stared fixedly at Long Yun with eyes that almost split apart. His hands had formed fists that were clenched tightly, and his body trembled intensely. His nephew had been killed by this person. Even though in an occasion like this, his nephew was bound to have died for nothing, but he still hated Long Yun to the extreme and wished for nothing more than to tear Long Yun apart. At the same time, along with Long Yun killing his opponent, the other 18 young geniuses made a move successively. The battles in the first phase of the dynasty martial competition were carried out vigorously. After Long Yun and until Su Li entered the arena, another 3 7th level Void Initiation Stage martial artists had appeared, and as for 6th level Void Initiation Stage martial artists, there were even more, around 20 or so. In next to no time, Su Li entered the arena. Su Li was the possessor of command token No. 237. Swish! An ear-piercing sword howl sounded out. Su Li's opponent, a young genius at the 5th level of the Void Initiation Stage, had his belt instantly cut off by Su Li, and he embarrassedly held up his pants as he admitted defeat and left. Ha 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 ha, sure enough, a wave of laughter arose in the surroundings. The originally serious atmosphere of the Dynasty Martial competition was completely destroyed. At the same time, Su Li advanced. This young sword cultivator's strength is so strong, with just a single strike, he'd cut off his opponent's belt, and from the beginning until the end, the ancient horned dragon silhouettes in the sky hadn't even had the time to condense into form before dispersing. Although we can't determine his cultivation from the ancient horned dragon silhouettes, but I guess that his cultivation is at least at the 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage or above. This is for sure. If he isn't at the 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage, it would be impossible for his sword to be so swift. Another 7th level Void Initiation Stage martial artist. Up until now, there have already been 5 martial artists at the 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage amongst the young geniuses of the various empires. There are still another 1/3 of young geniuses that haven't entered the arena. I presume that another 2 or 3 7th level Void Initiation Stage martial artists will appear. Under the waves of bustling discussion, Su Li returned to sit by Duan Lingtian's side. Su Li. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed as a slight puzzled expression suffused his face. Earlier, even though Su Li had attacked, yet he didn't utilize a single shred of sword concept, causing the curiosity in Duan Lingtian's heart to grow deeper. To what level had Su Li, who was at the 8th level of the Void Initiation Stage, have comprehended his sword concept to? Long Yun's saber concept improved so swiftly that it's shocking, or Long Yun possesses a concept fragment, and it's a saber concept fragment. When he thought of Long Yun's current comprehension in saber concept, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but guess like this. Besides this, he was unable to wrap his head around why Long Yun's saber concept would advance so quickly. If Long Yun possesses a saber concept fragment, then Su Li will surely possess a sword concept fragment. In this way, Su Li's attainments in sword concept ought to surpass Long Yun's attainments in saber concept. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian took a deep breath. If it really was like this, then Su Li and Long Yun's fortuitous encounters were truly shocking. Even though this fortuitous encounter was inferior to his, it wasn't much inferior. At this moment, besides Duan Lingtian and Long Yun, the gazes everyone present in this spectating area shot at Su Li was completely different. King Yang, I finally understand why your Darkstone Empire's Long Yun praised him so highly since the beginning. His strength is really not inferior to Long Yun. The representative of Holdwin Empire, the old man surnamed Liu, glanced at Su Li before looking at King Yang and sighing. Your Darkstone Empire is really hiding many talented people. The corners of King Yang's mouth twitched when he heard this. Presently, Su Li's strength was indeed not inferior to Long Yun. Senior Liu, you're too kind. Long Yun and Su Li successively bringing honor to the Darkstone Empire caused King Yang, who was the representative of the Darkstone Empire, to feel exceedingly proud, and he was imperceivably superior when facing the representative of the Holdwin Empire now. Now, I'm slightly looking forward to the performance of the other young genius of your Darkstone Empire that Long Yun takes seriously. As he spoke, the old man's gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian. King Yang looked over along with the old man. Duan Lingtian, now, even he couldn't help but be shocked in his heart. Needless to say, Long Yun and Su Li's strength had indeed shocked him. But in his eyes, no matter in what aspect, Duan Lingtian had always surpassed Long Yun and Su Li without a doubt. Even now, when he saw that Su Li and Long Yun had obtained fortuitous encounters of their own that allowed their strengths to increase greatly when compared from a year ago. Even then, he still looked favorably upon Duan Lingtian. So he was similarly looking forward towards Duan Lingtian's performance. Duan Lingtian naturally noticed the gazes of the old man and King Yang, yet he didn't care. His gaze descended onto the sky above the arena, and he watched the pairs of young geniuses fight each other. Time silently flowed by. In next to no time, the first round of the selection today was almost at the end. In the later parts of the first round, another 2 7th level Void Initiation Stage young geniuses had appeared. Bang! Along with a 6th level Void Initiation Stage Young Genius defeating another 6th level Void Initiation Stage Young Genius, the first round of the selections was officially over. Merely this first round had eliminated 180 people. Of course, there were many people that weren't resigned to their elimination. For example, the 6th level Void Initiation Stage martial artist that was the last to be defeated. If it wasn't for him being unlucky and just happened to encounter a 6th level Void Initiation Stage martial artist that was stronger than him, he would have surely been one of the people that advanced. But he wasn't anxious, because he knew he still had a chance. This first round of the selections has ended. After 15 minutes, the second round of the selections will continue, and 90 people will be eliminated once more. The white-clothed young man stood in the sky above the arena as he spoke with a sonorous voice that spread out. During the 15 minutes of time, the 10 middle-aged men that were in charge of recording the results had gathered together and started to unify the results and list out the order of battles, whereas, the group of young geniuses that had advanced finally had a chance to catch a breath. King Yong, I was thinking that our Holdwin Empire could compete with your Darkstone Empire and see the young geniuses of which side will be able to stand until the end. Now it would seem that there's no need for this. The old man looked at King Yong as he shook his head and sighed. Now, the situation was clear. Their Holdwin Empire's young geniuses were far inferior to the young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire. The Darkstone Empire had 2 young geniuses at the 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage or above and another young genius that was suspected to be at the 7th level of the Void Initiation Stage or above. Their Holdwin Empire only had 2 6th level Void Initiation Stage young geniuses and was utterly unable to compare with the Darkstone Empire. The group of young geniuses of the Holdwin Empire lowered their heads in embarrassment when they heard this, and they felt that they'd thrown the face of the Holdwin Empire. Whereas no matter if it were the young geniuses that had been eliminated or not, all the young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire sat ramrod straight with brilliant smiles on their faces. Amongst the 9 young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire, 3 were eliminated. Amongst the 10 young geniuses of the Holdwin Empire, 5 were eliminated. The Darkstone Empire's results caused Duan Lingtian to be slightly surprised. The second round of the selections begin. In next to no time, 15 minutes has passed, and the white-clothed young man's voice sounded out once more, causing everyone to be unable to refrain from shuddering and returning to their senses. As for the 10 middle-aged men that were in charge of recording the results, they'd already taken their respective positions. The possessors of command token number 1 until number 40, so long as you've advanced in the first round, then come over. The white-clothed young man spoke with a sonorous voice. After the first round of selection, half of the people amongst the possessors of command token number 1 until number 40 had been eliminated, and only 20 people remained. It was just enough to pool together 10 battles. This time, 2 people from the Darkstone Empire entered the arena. One of them was Gao Yuhai. The other, no, 32. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed as he looked at the number on the command token in his hand, and then he followed Gao Yuhao to leave the spectating area and arrive in the sky above the arena to gather with the other 18 young geniuses. The possessors of command token number 2 and number 3, come over here. A middle-aged man spoke out directly. Instantly, Gao Yuhai who'd drawn command token number 3 earlier went over with another young genius. Obviously, during the first round of the selection earlier, number 2 had won the battle with number 1 and advanced. In the battle between number 3 and number 4, it was instead no 3 that was victorious. Subsequently, the other 9 middle-aged men spoke out successively. The possessors of command token number 30 and number 32, come over here. Along with a middle-aged man in the east speaking out, Duan Lingtian flew over. After Duan Lingtian, another young man followed over like a shadow. Obviously, he was the possessor of command token number 30, and at the same time, he was Duan Lingtian's opponent for this battle. 670 Chapter 671, Duan Lingtian displaying his skill. The possessor of command token number 30 was a young man around the age of 35. Needless to say, the young geniuses of the various empires were top genius martial artists in the empires they were from, and they possessed their own pride. Duan Lingtian's opponent was no exception. The young man had an arrogant expression as he sized Duan Lingtian up with contempt, and asked with disdain. "You're that kid that advanced automatically in the first round." However, Duan Lingtian paid no attention to the young man, or perhaps, it could be said that Duan Lingtian couldn't be bothered. After he used his spiritual force to detect his opponent's cultivation, Duan Lingtian had already completely disregarded his opponent. A 5th-level Void Initiation stage martial artist was of no threat to him in the slightest. "Kid, you're rather arrogant." When he saw Duan Lingtian disregard him, the young man's face sank, and his eyes revealed a ruthless sheen as he spoke in a deep voice. "Do you know that no one has dared disregard me? Someone has today." Duan Lingtian still didn't look at the young man as he straightened out his sleeves and spoke unhurriedly. "Kid, you're courting death." The young man's face darkened as origin energy rose on his body, and he seemed to have transformed into flames as he whistled out. Whoosh! In the sky, the energy of heaven and earth roiled to finally converge into 7 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. All of this had undoubtedly revealed the young man's cultivation. 5th level of the Void Initiation stage. If it wasn't for the white-clothed young man that was in charge of presiding over the Dynasty Martial competition today having not announced the beginning of the battles, the young man would have already impatiently attacked Duan Lingtian. At this moment, the gazes of everyone on the spectating area, the group of Darkstone Empire's members were present at looked at Duan Lingtian. Especially King Yang and the representative of Holdwin Empire, they even stared at Duan Lingtian with burning gazes. Both of them wanted to know what Duan Lingtian's current cultivation was, as he was actually able to make Long Yun, who had broken through to the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage, think so highly of him. Duan Lingtian. Long Yun stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian as he took a deep breath and similarly anxiously wanted to know Duan Lingtian's current cultivation. Besides defeating Su Li and bringing honor to his master, his goal was to defeat Duan Lingtian and wash away the humiliation of the past. If it was possible, he would kill Duan Lingtian after defeating Duan Lingtian, so as to avoid Duan Lingtian looking for trouble with the Azure Forest Trisect in the future. Within the Azure Forest Trisect, the original sect leader of the demonic Lotusblade sect was his foster father, and he owed his foster father greatly. He didn't want to allow his foster father to be in danger. "I'm finally able to see you fight." At the same time that he muttered, Su Li had an expression filled with anticipation. The third-class spectating area in the surroundings of the cage battle arena was now in an uproar. That's the young man that had good luck during the first round of the selections and advanced automatically. This young man ought to be the youngest amongst the young geniuses of the various empires that have arrived here today, right? Exactly, he's indeed the youngest, and he looks to be around 25 at most. Which empire is he from? Could it be that there was no one else amongst the younger generation of that empire? These spectators in the third-class spectating area were unable to see the situation in the second-class spectating areas. Another member of the Darkstone Empire. Some representatives of other empires in the second-class spectating areas knew of Duan Lingtian's origins. This time, the 2 young geniuses at the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage or above had come from the Darkstone Empire, and it was difficult for the Darkstone Empire to not draw attention. "Kid, if you're sensible then quickly admit defeat. Otherwise, once the battle starts, I'll tear you in two." Duan Lingtian's opponent, the young man had a savage expression, and his eyes flickered with a bloody red sheen that seemed as if he was waiting for an opportunity to swallow Duan Lingtian up. "Tear me in two." Duan Lingtian smiled. "That will depend on if you have the ability. You'll see soon enough." Although Duan Lingtian's composed expression causing the young man to faintly feel something was off. But this trace of uneasiness vanished when he saw Duan Lingtian's young appearance. He didn't think that a young man that was around the age of 25 would be a match for him, a 5th-level Void Initiation stage martial artist, and his opponent was just being deliberately mystifying. He believed that so long as he persisted to the moment that the white-clothed young man announced that the battle's begun, then this young man before him would surely admit defeat at the first possible moment, whereas, he would seize the opportunity within that instant to tear the young man in two. He would do as he said. "Begin." After the 20 young geniuses took their places, the white-clothed young man spoke out. Instantly, many young geniuses attacked, and they chose to attack first to seize the initiative. Amongst them included Duan Lingtian's opponent. The instant the white-clothed young man finished speaking, Duan Lingtian's opponent flashed out towards Duan Lingtian like a hunting eagle that was capturing its prey. In the sky, another 8 ancient horned dragon silhouettes and a few thousand ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared by the side of the existing 7 ancient horned dragons. Obviously, not only was Duan Lingtian's opponent a 5th-level Void Initiation stage martial artist, he'd even comprehended 5th-level concept and possessed a grade 5 spirit weapon. Hiss! The young man's right hand held tightly onto his spirit weapon claw as it tore through the sky and gave rise to a wave, a light howl of the wind that were slightly ear-piercing. His figure flashed out like the wind and arrived before Duan Lingtian in the blink of an eye. He attacked out swiftly like a bolt of lightning. His grade 5 spirit weapon containing raging origin energy as his 5th level concept followed his origin energy like a shadow and flashed out in the sky to head straight towards Duan Lingtian's head. Duan Lingtian's expression was calm as before when faced with the full-forced strike of a 5th level void initiation stage martial artist. When he saw his opponent's sharp claw flashing over, Duan Lingtian made his move. Sword drawing arts. His opponent hadn't arrived, yet Duan Lingtian had already raised his hand and lightly shook his hand. No one present clearly saw the violet-colored sword light that flashed by, and it seemed to have transformed into a toxic colubrity snake that fiercely bit the young man's neck. Whoosh! Along with the sword light vanishing, the surrounding spectators weren't even in time to react to what had happened when Duan Lingtian had already put away the violet myrtle flexible sword in his hand and kicked out. Bang! At the instant before the young man's sharp claw had approached him, Duan Lingtian's leg had kicked onto the young man's chest and kicked him flying. At this moment, the young man remained unmoving and allowed Duan Lingtian to kick him flying. If one were to look carefully, one would be able to notice that it wasn't that he didn't want to move. It was because he was already dead. On his throat was an exceedingly tiny mark of the sword, and dazzling and resplendent fresh blood was ceaselessly spraying from there. A 5th level void initiation stage martial artist was killed by Duan Lingtian with a single move. Number 32 is victorious. The middle-aged man that was in charge of recording the results was stunned for a moment before recovering from his shock and announcing the results. How strong! He killed a 5th level void initiation stage martial artist in a single move. Is this really a young man only around the age of 25? The crowd that originally thought that Duan Lingtian would surely lose were dumbstruck. Why does the Darkstone Empire have so many young experts? Many Empire representatives couldn't help but frown, as they never imagined that such strong young geniuses would appear successively from the Darkstone Empire. As far as they were concerned, the strength of this violet-clothed young man seemed to not be inferior to the other 2 young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire that were at the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage or above. As expected, the Holdwin Empire's representative sighed. Even though King Yang was mentally prepared since long ago, he was still shocked. Duan Lingtian is actually so strong. This fellow seems to have still been holding back. Su Li's straight brows raised as he thought to himself. Duan Lingtian. Long Yun had a serious expression. When Duan Lingtian attacked earlier, he wasn't able to see it clearly, and it allowed him to realize that he was still slightly inferior to Duan Lingtian. This caused him to be extremely displeased. I wonder what the odds for my victory were. When faced with the numerous burning gazes, Duan Lingtian completely disregarded them as he flashed out and transformed into a violet-colored bolt of lightning that flashed out. But this time, he didn't return to where the others from the Darkstone Empire were at, and he instead headed directly towards the first-class spectating area. His actions caused many people to be stunned. It doesn't seem like everyone is able to go up there, right? Even the white-clothed young man that was in charge of presiding over the cage battle arena couldn't help but look over slightly. When he saw Duan Lingtian sit by the side of the 3 members of the Feng clan, slight surprise suffused the white-clothed young man's face. Someone from a tiny empire like him actually knows Feng Wudao. Tian Wu, how much did we win? Duan Lingtian sat by Feng Tian Wu's side and asked slightly impatiently. Feng Tian Wu was stunned, then she realized what Duan Lingtian was speaking of, and she couldn't help but say with a bitter smile. Big brother Duan, the cage battle arena hasn't started the betting yet. The betting will only start once when the 3rd round of the selections begins. It only starts during the 3rd round of the selections. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be stunned when he heard this, and then he realized that he was too impatient. Duan Lingtian smiled embarrassedly, and then he notified Feng Wudao and Elder Kong before returning to the spectating area that the others from the Darkstone Empire were seated at and sat by Su Li's side. Duan Lingtian, you know someone sitting in the first-class spectating area? The representative of the Holdwin Empire, the old man surnamed Lu, looked at Duan Lingtian and asked with a surprised expression. Kind of. Duan Lingtian nodded casually. Kind of. The corners of the old man's mouth twitched. What kind of answer is this? After Duan Lingtian sat down, he could notice many gazes still lingering on him and weren't withdrawn for a long time, and it caused him to be speechless. Fortunately, after a short while, those gazes moved away from him successively, and it caused him to heave a sigh of relief. The feeling of being looked at like a monkey was extremely displeasing. Meanwhile, the other 18 young geniuses had successively decided on the victor of their battles. The 10 people including Duan Lingtian had become the people that were the first to advance in the second round, whereas, Gao Yuhai who'd entered the arena with Duan Lingtian had instead been eliminated. Subsequently, the second round continued. Because the people participating in the second round were only half of the people that participated in the first round of the selections, the second round finished quickly. At the side of the Darkstone Empire, only Duan Lingtian, Su Li, and Long Yun had advanced. As for the Holdwen Empire, only 2 of them remained, and they were the 2 strongest 6th-level Void Initiation stage martial artists of the Holdwen Empire. The second round of the selections has ended. Rest for 15 minutes, after 15 minutes, the third round of the selections will continue. The white-clothed young man spoke out in a timely manner. 671 Chapter 672, Advancing Successively. Up until now, the group of young geniuses that participated in the Dynasty Martial competition had either directly crushed their opponents or directly been crushed by their opponents. Of course, there were some that were on par, and the battles between these young geniuses relied more on their own combat experience and skill. The skill here usually meant martial skills. But in terms of the level of their martial skills, the young geniuses present were practically on par, and they'd all mastered a high-grade Earth-rank martial skill at the perfection stage. This was something that Duan Lingtian had noticed since long ago. To avoid prying stage martial artist, Earth-rank martial skills were connected to the force they'd comprehended. So long as their force attained the advanced stage, their high-grade Earth-rank martial skill would step into the perfection stage, whereas, this caused Void Initiation stage martial artists to be in an extremely embarrassing situation. Unless they comprehended Void Interpretation concept as soon as possible and cultivated a Heaven-rank martial skill, otherwise, when they were going against an opponent, they would notice that their opponents were usually on par with them in their attainments of martial skills. Thus, a battle between the two was mostly reliant open origin energy and concept. If their origin energy and concept were on par, then it would instead be a test of their respective combat experience and the difference between 2 martial skills that were similarly high-grade Earth-rank martial skills. One with a more obvious gap of inferiority to the opponent would surely lose. In relation to martial skills, there's an insurmountable gap between Heaven-rank martial skills and Earth-rank martial skills. Through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, Duan Lingtian had a certain level of understanding towards Heaven-rank martial skills. Heaven-rank martial skills were different from Earth-rank martial skills. Earth-rank martial skills completely relied on the level of one's force, whereas, even though Heaven-rank martial skills had a threshold of requiring the Void Interpretation stage to comprehend, or in other words intermediate concept to cultivate, it didn't adhere to the level of concept. It was mainly a guide to more flawlessly utilize one's concept and origin energy so as to execute a much more effective attack, defense, and speed. For example, in a battle between 2 first-level Void Interpretation stage martial artists, their comprehension and concept were equal, yet the former's spirit weapon was a level lower than the latter. It would be the strength of an entire 2 ancient horned dragons inferior to the latter. Under these circumstances, if the former's attainments in a Heaven-rank martial skill far surpassed the latter, then it wouldn't be impossible for the former to obtain victory. At that time, the profundity of a Heaven-rank martial skill was sufficient to disregard the difference of a mere 2 ancient horned dragons. For example, the latter's brute strength surpassed the former, yet the former was more adept in skills than the latter, so, it wasn't impossible for the former to obtain victory. Duan Lingtian's heart jerked when he thought up to here. Of course, even though it was brute strength, the difference couldn't be too great. For example, when an adult was compared against a child, even if the adult didn't know any skills, yet the child had attained perfection in his skills, it would still be impossible for a child to defeat an adult. When difference in strength comes to a certain extent, the one with a stronger strength would completely crush the weaker one. This was something that Duan Lingtian was extremely clear of. Amongst Heaven-rank martial skills, low-grade Heaven-rank martial skills are still fine as they don't possess too many requirements. If it was a high-grade Heaven-rank martial skill, then not everyone was capable of cultivating it. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but shake his head when he recalled the 9 Tribulations sword control technique he obtained in the Sword Monarch's treasure. That 9 Tribulations sword control technique required spiritual force to be utilized when executing it. Unless one was an inscription master, otherwise, only once one became a martial emperor would one be capable of utilizing spiritual force to execute the 9 Tribulations sword control technique. Compared to the 9 Tribulations sword control technique, Even though the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash contained within the 7th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique was a high-grade heaven rank martial skill, it didn't require relying on spiritual force. It relied on, meanwhile, Duan Lingtian started flashing through the memories related to the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique left behind by the Rebirth Martial Emperor. Sword concept. Never had Duan Lingtian imagined that besides the mental cultivation method, the 7th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique also taught one how to comprehend sword concept in the shortest amount of time possible. So it turns out that this 9 Dragons Radiant Flash is a sword skill. It's a completely new sword skill that the Rebirth Martial Emperor combined the high-grade heaven rank sword skill, 9 Dragons Flash and Radiant Sword, to form. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding. Sword skill, sword concept. If I'm able to comprehend sword concept, then by relying on the sword concept fragment in my possession, wouldn't my advancement in sword concept be similar to my wind concept and advance at a tremendous pace? When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian's feelings surged. A pleasant surprise came too quickly. Early on, when he obtained the sword concept fragment, Duan Lingtian had once thought of comprehending sword force and allowing his sword force to transform into sword concept. In this way, the sword concept fragment could be used and not wasted. Moreover, if he comprehended sword concept, it would affect his future greatly. When he was in the Sword Monarch's treasure the other day, he'd once obtained 3 profundity fragments. One of the fragments amongst them was a sword profundity fragment. If he wanted the sword profundity fragment to be of use, then he had to first comprehend 9th level advanced concept, and only then would he be able to start touching upon sword profundity. No matter what, the 7th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique could be said to be timely assistance this time, and it pointed out the path of advancement for Duan Lingtian and allowed him to avoid taking a wrong turn. Duan Lingtian, Duan Lingtian, Duan Lingtian. Suddenly, in his daze, he heard a wave of shouts calling out to him. He shuddered and returned to his senses before looking at Su Li, who was by his side. What's wrong? Earlier, it was exactly Su Li who was calling him. Don't get distracted, it's your turn to enter the arena. Su Li laughed bitterly. Duan Lingtian was stunned when he heard this, and then he raised his head to look over and saw Long Yun had already flashed towards the sky above the arena. There were also another 18 young geniuses flashing out. The 3rd round has started. Duan Lingtian reacted to what was going on, and then he flashed out to follow up to the others. The people that were the first to enter the arena after the 3rd round of the selections begun were the young geniuses that possessed command token number 1 to number 80 that had won their battles. Duan Lingtian's opponent was a young man in green clothed. 4th level void initiation stage. After he detected his opponent's cultivation, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be stunned. After the 20 young geniuses took their positions, the white-clothed young man's voice sounded out. Begin. I admit defeat. As soon as the white-clothed young man finished speaking, a panicked voice sounded out right after, and it was extremely anxious. It was Duan Lingtian's opponent, the green-clothed young man that had admitted defeat. It was slightly out of Duan Lingtian's expectations that his opponent would admit defeat so swiftly, and he couldn't help but be stunned. Even a 5th level void initiation stage martial artist was killed by you with a single move. I feel I'm far from being a match for you. May you be able to obtain the qualifications to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties in the end. Before the green-clothed young man left, he nodded to Duan Lingtian. As far as he was concerned, with the strength of the violet-clothed young man before him, it wasn't difficult to advance in the first phase of the martial competition today. So, he wished Duan Lingtian success in obtaining the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Thank you. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and replied. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian became the first person to advance in the 3rd round. I admit defeat. In next to no time, another voice sounded out. It was Long Yun's opponent that had admitted defeat. Long Yun was the second to advance. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian and Long Yun headed towards the same place and returned to the second-class spectating area where everyone from the Darkstone Empire was seated. Congratulations. A smile appeared on King Yong's face. At this moment, he was able to notice that when the representatives of the various empires looked at him, their eyes were filled with envy and jealousy, and it caused him to feel as if he was floating. Besides a portion of people admitting defeat in the 3rd round, the battles were even more intense. It's my turn. Not long after, it was Su Li's turn, whereas, Su Li had only gone over as a formality, because his opponent had directly admitted defeat without the slightest hesitation. Su Li advanced. At the side of the Darkstone Empire, all the three young geniuses that had obtained the qualification to participate in the third round had advanced, whereas, the two young geniuses of the Holdwin Empire had good luck, as they didn't encounter an existence above the 6th level of the Void Initiation stage, allowing both of them to advance. Only 45 young geniuses were able to advance from the third round of the selections. After another 15 minutes of rest, the fourth round continued. The goal of the fourth round was to decide on the 30 young geniuses. Duan Lingtian, Long Yun, and Su Li didn't encounter the other 7th level Void Initiation stage young geniuses and easily advanced once again. But, after they advanced this time, the middle-aged man that was in charge of recording the results asked them to stay behind. Looks like the result for today's competition is about to be announced. Su Li's voice transmission entered clearly into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian nodded. It's still so early. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian looked at the sky, and he noticed that dusk still hadn't descended. In next to no time, the other 27 young geniuses had advanced as well. The fourth round of the selections have ended, now, the fifth round of the selections will begin. No matter who it is, as long as it's someone that had been eliminated, you have a single chance to issue a challenge. The white-clothed young man's voice sounded out in the entire cage battle arena, and his voice reverberated in ears of everyone like thunder. Those who feel their luck was bad earlier can come up here and issue a challenge to the 30 young geniuses here. Remember, everyone only possesses one's chance. Once you've lost, you'll lose any chance of participating in the next phase of the Dynasty Martial competition. The white-clothed young man continued to add. Instantly, a wave of heavy breathing that rose and fell rhythmically sounded out from the second-class spectating area that surrounded the cage battle arena, whereas, everyone in the third-class spectating area looked toward the sky above the arena in anticipation. All of them knew that this was the last chance for the group of young geniuses that were eliminated earlier. So long as they possessed strength and confidence, the young geniuses would surely not let this opportunity slip by. 672 Chapter 673, End of the First Phase. It has finally come to this time. A young man in one of the second-class spectating areas stood up before flashing out to stand in the sky above the arena, and he rubbed his palms together as he spoke with an excited expression. Obviously, he was waiting a long time for this moment. Duan Lingtian looked towards the young man, and he had a slight impression of this person. This person was a 6th-level Void Initiation stage martial artist that didn't have good luck earlier and encountered another 6th-level Void Initiation stage martial artist that caused his loss. In next to no time, this young man chose an opponent. His opponent was in existence at the 5th level of the Void Initiation stage. When he revealed his strength at the 6th level of the Void Initiation stage, his 6th level concept, and Grade 5 spirit weapon, his opponent admitted defeat directly, and he smoothly advanced. Me too. With someone taking the lead, another few young geniuses that felt their luck weren't good earlier had flashed out successively as well and started to issue challenges. Some succeeded, while some didn't, yet even if they failed, they weren't the slightest bit dejected, and instead heaved a sigh of relief. At least, they'd tried and had no regrets. Along with the passage of time, practically all the 5th-level Void Initiation stage martial artists amongst the 30 young geniuses that had advanced to this stage were eliminated via challenges from others. For a time, besides young geniuses at the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage or above, only a group of 6th level of the Void Initiation stage martial artists remained. From the beginning until the end, the almost 10 young geniuses at the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage and above, which included Duan Lingtian, Su Li, and Long Yun, weren't challenged by anyone. But some other 6th-level Void Initiation stage young geniuses were occasionally replaced. Time silently passed by. Unknowingly, a red glow started to emerge in the horizon, and dusk gradually descended. Meanwhile, there were already no people taking the initiative to issue a challenge any longer. After 15 minutes, if no one comes up to issue a challenge any longer, then the Dynasty Martial competition today will come to an end. The white-clothed young man stood in the sky above the arena and spoke slowly, and his voice clearly spread out toward the surroundings. In next to no time, 15 minutes passed and no one issued a challenge any longer. The Dynasty Martial competition today has come to an end. The 30 young geniuses that have advanced to the second phase will still gather here tomorrow. At that time, all of you will gather with the young experts of the various powers of the Darkened Dynasty and carry out the battles of the second phase of the Dynasty Martial competition. After he finished speaking, the white-clothed young man directly flew off. The crowd of spectators in the cage battle arena left successively as well. It was only a warm-up today, tomorrow will be the most interesting. At that time, these 30 young geniuses of the various empires that were carefully selected will compete with the most outstanding young geniuses of our darkened dynasty, and it's truly something that's worthy of anticipation. All the spectators at the third-class spectating area gradually dispersed, and similar excited voice rose and fell. I must come earlier and occupy a good spot tomorrow. Now that I speak of it, my luck was really good by placing my bets on those 7th-level Void Initiation stage young geniuses. Even though the return wasn't high, I still earned some silver. You still want to occupy a good spot tomorrow? What a joke. I've already decided that once most people have left, I'll occupy a spot and not leave, I'll pass the night here tonight. This idea isn't bad, why didn't I think of it earlier? In next to no time, many spectators in the third-class spectating area stopped moving, and their gazes stared at the extremely good seats as if they were starving wolves staring at their prey. In the sky above the cage battle arena, the 30 young geniuses stood silently in the air. Swoosh, 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 right at this moment, waves of ear-piercing howls of the wind sounded out. Subsequently, numerous figures could be seen flying through the sky and standing in the sky above the cage battle arena. These people were the people from the various empires that the 30 young geniuses belonged to. Presently, the faces of all these people were filled with excitement. As for those empires that didn't advance to the second phase, their representatives and young geniuses left with dejection. Duan Lingtian, Su Li, Long Yun, congratulations. King Yong brought along the members of the Darkstone Empire to stand nearby Duan Lingtian's group of 3 as he lightly smiled and spoke. 3 people from the Darkstone Empire had advanced, and this was something only the Darkstone Empire had succeeded in doing. This time, the Darkstone Empire could be said to be in the limelight. It was even to the extent the person in charge of the cage battle arena had even personally come to see King Yong and said that due to the Darkstone Empire's performance this time, the Darken Dynasty's imperial family would bestow generous rewards to the Darkstone Empire. Duan Lingtian and Su Li replied with a smile, and as for Long Yun, he had a calm expression that showed no emotion from the beginning until the end. But, at this moment, Duan Lingtian had instead clearly noticed that when Long Yun occasionally glanced at him, it obviously contained deep battle intent. Obviously, Long Yun still had the intention of trampling on Duan Lingtian beneath his feet and washing away the shame he suffered in the past. Big brother Duan. Suddenly, a voice transmission entered Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian was able to discern that this was Feng Tianwu's voice. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian informed King Yong and Su Li before flying up to ascend the first-class spectating area under the complicated gazes of everyone from the Darkstone Empire, and he arrived by the side of the 3 members of the Feng clan. Tianwu. Duan Lingtian looked at Feng Tianwu and smiled. How much are the winnings? He guessed that the reason Feng Tianwu called him over was none other than because of the wager of low-grade origin stones. Feng Tianwu laughed bitterly. Your odds were very low. I placed all the low-grade origin stones during the 3rd and 4th round, yet only 300 low-grade origin stones were won in the end. 300 low-grade origin stones? Duan Lingtian was stunned. So little. Even though he'd guessed that his odds wouldn't be so high, yet he never imagined that it would be low to such an extent. Isn't this a little too absurd, right? He only wanted to earn some origin stones. He wasn't greedy, he only wanted to double his origin stones and obtain another 5,000 origin stones. Just a small wish of his was so hard to realize. Brother Duan, you're too anxious. The Dynasty Martial competition today could utterly not be considered as the real Dynasty Martial competition, and it's only a competition between the young geniuses of your various empires. The nearby Elder Kong shook his head, and then he said, the Dynasty Martial competition tomorrow is the true main attraction. At that time, ask the young miss to place all the low-grade origin stones on yourself, and you'll surely earn quite a bit. Of course, the precondition would be that you're confident in continuously obtaining victory. Tomorrow, Duan Lingtian's gaze abruptly lit up when he heard this. Right, tomorrow is the true start of the Dynasty Martial competition. At that time, all the 30 young geniuses including him that had just advanced to the second phase would gather together with all the outstanding young geniuses of the Darken Dynasty to compete for the qualification to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. He could imagine that the Dynasty Martial competition that began tomorrow would surely be even more bustling and interesting. Today, amongst the 30 people that had become eminent from the young geniuses of the various empires, there were less than 10 existences at the 7th level of the void initiation stage or above, whereas, the young geniuses at the 7th level of the void initiation stage and above in the Darken Dynasty were far more than this. Since it's like this, Tian Wu, take care of those origin stones for me. Tomorrow, if I enter the arena, remember to place all the origin stones on me, said Duan Lingtian to Feng Tianwu. Now, Duan Lingtian seemed to have already seen a large pile of low-grade origin stones waving at him and waiting for him to take them. Unfortunately, if it wasn't for mid-grade origin stones and high-grade origin stones being too attention-drawing, I'd surely bet all the origin stones in my possession on myself. Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart and felt great regret that he was unable to be too conspicuous. Lingtian, follow us back today as well. Presently, even though the Darken Dynasty seems to be peaceful, but undercurrents are actually flowing in secret, and it's the safest if you're by my side. Feng Wudao looked at Duan Lingtian and suggested. His words were filled with confidence, as if so long as Duan Lingtian was by his side, then no one would dare touch Duan Lingtian in the territory of the Darken Dynasty. Okay. Duan Lingtian didn't refuse Feng Wudao's good intentions and directly agreed before saying, Uncle Feng, I'll go notify King Yang. Since he'd decided to continue staying at the Feng clan estate, then he had to notify King Yang. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian's figure flashed to appear nearby King Yang and the group of young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian noticed that King Yang was surrounded in the center by a group of old men and was chatting cheerfully with them. As he spoke, he was in high spirits as if he'd encountered a happy thing. Even though he couldn't clearly hear what King Yang was discussing with the old men, Duan Lingtian could guess some things. It was none other than because 3 people from the Darkstone Empire had advanced today. Duan Lingtian was able to recognize that the old men surrounding King Yang were the representatives of the other empires. Because of him, Su Li, and Long Yun, the Darkstone Empire could be said to be standing right beneath the limelight this time, and it caused the members of the other empires to hold the Darkstone Empire in high esteem. King Yang. Duan Lingtian spoke out suddenly, and although his voice wasn't loud, it caused King Yang to return to his senses. Duan Lingtian. King Yang looked over to the source of the voice. King Yang, your Darkstone Empire is really more than meets the eye. Such a young little fellow already possesses a cultivation that seems to be at the 7th level of the void initiation stage and above. He really isn't simple. Duan Lingtian, this name is domineering enough. He too is just like his name. After the old men saw Duan Lingtian, they weren't stingy with words of praise in the slightest. Thank you, seniors, for the praise. I'm embarrassed by this undeserved praise. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled to the old men. Not bad, neither arrogant nor haughty, he's a good young prospect. The old men nodded repeatedly in praise once more. King Yang. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian didn't continue to exchange pleasantries with the old men, and he looked at King Yang instead. I won't be going back with all of you today, I'll return to the Feng clan estate with Uncle Feng and the others. All right, King Yang nodded, then I'll see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Duan Lingtian replied to King Yang, and then he bid his farewell to Su Li before leaving with the 3 members of the Feng clan. King Yang, this Duan Lingtian of your Darkstone Empire even knows a great figure that has the qualification to ascend to the first-class spectating area of the capital's cage battle arena. An old man looked at Duan Lingtian's figure that disappeared into the distance and asked King Yang curiously. 673 Chapter 674, Grade 3 Spirit Sword. The differences in the levels of spectating areas of the Darken Dynasty's capital's cage battle arena was something that one could know clearly by slightly inquiring about it. The old man that asked King Yang had obviously long since known of this. Yes, King Yang nodded when faced with the old man's question. He said the Feng clan earlier. Feng clan, could it be that Feng clan? When the figures of Duan Lingtian and the 3 Feng clan members vanished before their eyes, another old man reacted to the meaning within Duan Lingtian's words, and his pupils couldn't help but constrict as he asked with shock. Subsequently, the gazes of the old men descended onto King Yang in unison. Who within the territory of the Darken Dynasty didn't know of the Feng clan? The Feng clan was a formidable clan that was merely inferior to the imperial family in the Darken Dynasty. Supposedly, even the Darken Dynasty's imperial family doesn't dare to really come into conflict with the Feng clan. Perhaps, with the imperial family's hidden reserves and resources, it was sufficient to annihilate the Feng clan. But even if the Feng clan is annihilated, the imperial family would surely be greatly injured in the process as well. How terrifying the Feng clan was could be known from this. It was precisely because of this that the Feng clan's status in the Darken dynasty was exceedingly high, and it could be said to be below one and above all. Now, a mere young man from the Darkstone Empire actually seemed to be related to the higher-ups of the Feng clan. This caused them to be shocked. Exactly, it's the Feng clan. King Yong nodded when faced with the old men's questions. As far as he was concerned, this was no secret. It was even to the extent that so long as the higher-ups of the various powers in the Darken dynasty were to gather together, then the identity of that person from the Feng clan would surely be exposed, and it would be difficult to be concealed. Although they had already guessed it, when they heard King Yong personally admit it, the old men couldn't help but gasp. King Yong, do you know which person of the Feng clan's higher-ups is that person? An old man couldn't refrain from asking curiously. Whoever is the strongest in the Feng clan, he is that person. King Yong spoke slowly. At the same time that the old men were dumbstruck, King Yong called out to the other 8 young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire and flew off with them. Only after the figures of King Yong and the others vanished in the horizon did the old men recover from their shock, and all of them were visibly moved. I truly never imagined that not only has a young expert appeared in the Darkstone Empire, that young expert is even related to that eldest master of the Feng clan. It isn't as simple as being related. If I'm not wrong, the red-clothed young woman that followed by the Feng clan's eldest master's side earlier ought to be that young woman that gave rise to much discussion lately, the daughter of the Feng clan's eldest master, Lord Wu Dao. It looked to me that Lord Wu Dao's daughter was very close with Duan Lingtian. Could it be that the two of them? At the same time that the old men guessed, they couldn't refrain from gasping. Looks like not only can we not offend Duan Lingtian, even the Darkstone Empire can't be offended in the future. In next to no time, the old men had come to a mutual view. Duan Lingtian naturally didn't know all this. Presently, he'd already returned to the Feng clan estate with Feng Wu Dao, Feng Tianwu, and Elder Kong, and returned to the estate within the estate. Grandma Shu had prepared a sumptuous feast for their dinner. After they ate their fill, Elder Kong looked at Duan Lingtian. Brother Duan. Duan Lingtian looked curiously at Elder Kong, and he had slight bewilderment in his eyes. He didn't know what Elder Kong wanted to do. Whoosh. With a raise of his hand, a completely pitch-black 3-foot-long blade had appeared in Elder Kong's hand, and there were strands of a black-colored sheen flowing about in the surroundings of the blade. Grade 4 Spirit Sword. With a single glance, Duan Lingtian discerned the grade of this spirit sword, and at the same time, he guessed the reason Elder Kong withdrew this spirit sword, causing his heart to go slightly warm. Brother Duan, I know that you use swords. During the dynasty martial competition tomorrow, you'll surely encounter some young experts of the Darken dynasty that possess grade 4 spirit weapons. If you don't possess a grade 4 spirit weapon, then you'll be disadvantaged. This grade 4 spirit sword is something I asked an old friend to refine many years ago, and I'll gift it to you today. As Elder Kong spoke, he passed over the grade 4 spirit sword to Duan Lingtian. However, Duan Lingtian didn't stretch out his hand to receive it, and he shook his head instead. Elder Kong, keep it. I don't need this grade 4 spirit sword. I don't need it. Duan Lingtian's attitude was extremely clear. He didn't need this grade 4 spirit sword. Brother Duan, it isn't the time to be polite now. How about this? If you really don't want to keep this sword of mine, then take it as I'm lending it to you. How about it? Elder Kong thought that Duan Lingtian wasn't willing to accept his gift, and he took a step back and suggested. When she saw Duan Lingtian remaining indifferent, Feng Tianwu who sat by Duan Lingtian's side couldn't watch on any longer, and she persuaded as well. Big brother Duan, take it. This is Grandpa Kong's good intentions. Moreover, it's just as Grandpa Kong said. During the dynasty martial competition tomorrow, most of the young geniuses of the Darken dynasty will surely possess grade 4 spirit weapons. You'll be at a disadvantage if you don't possess a grade 4 spirit weapon. As she finished speaking, Feng Tianwu herself was slightly anxious. When Feng Tianwu started persuading him, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a slightly bitter smile. After Feng Tianwu finished speaking, the bitter smile on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth grew even deeper. Tianwu, Elder Kong, I know both of you have good intentions, but I really don't need this grade 4 spirit sword. Duan Lingtian spoke helplessly. In this age, why don't people believe you when you speak the truth? Grade 4 spirit sword. That was only a leftover of his, and it was no different than trash to him. All of you can stop persuading him. In terms of grade, that spirit sword in Ling Tian's possession is much higher than the spirit sword in Elder Kong's hands. Right when Feng Tianwu and Elder Kong were stunned, Feng Wudao spoke out, and his words seemed as if he was extremely clear of Duan Ling Tian's ability. Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but gasp. Never had he imagined that the sword strike he struck out and had appeared for only a brief moment during the first phase of the dynasty martial competition today had actually been seen through by Feng Wudao. In terms of grade, it's even higher than this spirit sword. Feng Wudao's words caused Elder Kong to be unable to help but gasp, and he muttered as he looked at the black sword in his hand. Didn't that mean that the spirit sword in Duan Ling Tian's possession is a spirit sword that possessed a grade even higher than grade 4? Could it be a grade 3 spirit sword? Father, what you mean is, the spirit sword in Big Brother Duan's possession is a grade 3 spirit sword. Meanwhile, Feng Tianwu recovered from her shock and asked with a trembling voice. Even to her, a grade 3 spirit weapon was in existence that was far beyond her reach. It was only because a grade 3 weapons craftsman didn't exist in the Darken Dynasty, so it was extremely difficult for a grade 3 spirit weapon to appear. Within the Darken Dynasty, there was only a single grade 3 spirit weapon that was known of, and it was in the possession of the Darken Dynasty's imperial family. Even the Feng clan didn't possess a grade 3 spirit weapon. Now, she heard that Duan Ling Tian possessed a grade 3 spirit weapon, so how could she not be shocked? This is something you have to ask him. Feng Wudao didn't reply directly, and instead looked at Duan Ling Tian who had a helpless expression. Big Brother Duan, instantly, Feng Tianwu looked at Duan Ling Tian. You really have a grade 3 spirit sword? Yes, Duan Ling Tian didn't deny it, and he had no intentions of denying it. After all, so long as he wanted to participate in the dynasty martial competition, then the grade 3 spirit sword in his possession would be exposed sooner or later. Exposing it sooner or later was actually the same. Moreover, he trusted the people before him and wasn't afraid that they would arouse malicious intentions because of the grade 3 spirit weapon in his possession. Big Brother Duan, can you let me see your grade 3 spirit sword? I've never seen a grade 3 spirit weapon. Feng Tianwu was excited to the point her beautiful face was slightly rosy, and she looked at Duan Ling Tian with a yearning gaze. Of course, Duan Ling Tian nodded and didn't hesitate in the slightest to withdraw his violet myrtle flexible sword. This violet myrtle flexible sword was advanced to the ranks of grade 3 spirit weapon with the remaining materials after he helped Zhang Shouyang advance the spirit weapon gourd to the ranks of grade 4. Now, the violet myrtle flexible sword's outward appearance was no different than before. Yet there were strands of a violet-colored sheen moving rhythmically on the surroundings of the sword, and they were numerous violet-colored little snakes that were unwilling to leave the violet myrtle flexible sword. After Feng Tianwu received the violet myrtle flexible sword, she impatiently poured her origin energy into the sword. Whoosh! Instantly, the energy of heaven and earth roiled above Feng Tianwu, and it first condensed into 10 ancient horned dragon silhouettes before condensing another 7 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. The latter were obviously from the amplification of the violet myrtle flexible sword. 70%, an amplification of 70%. As she looked at the 17 ancient horned dragon silhouettes above her, Feng Tianwu's beautiful face was covered in shock, and she slightly lost her composure. Her pair of eyes that were like autumn water were even suffused with strands of disbelief. An amplification of 70%. Meanwhile, Feng Wudao who sat nearby, Elder Kong, and Grandma Shu were stunned as well. Especially Feng Wudao, although he'd already discerned that the sword Duan Ling Tian used was a grade 3 spirit sword when Duan Ling Tian fought today, he thought it was an ordinary grade 3 spirit sword. In the Darken Dynasty, an ordinary grade 3 spirit sword was already shocking. Never had he imagined that the grade 3 spirit sword in Duan Ling Tian's possession was actually a grade 3 spirit sword that was at the top grade amongst the top grade. How many grade 3 spirit swords that provided an amplification of 70% existed in this world? Big Brother Duan, where did you obtain this grade 3 spirit sword? Feng Tianwu was shocked to the point the hand she held the sword with trembled. If I said that I refined it myself, would you believe me? Duan Ling Tian smiled as he asked. At this moment, he seemed as if he entirely didn't notice the slightly dumbstruck gazes of Feng Wudao, Elder Kong, and Grandma Shu. Big Brother Duan, is what you said true? This was really refined by you? Although Feng Tianwu felt it was unbelievable, she understood Duan Ling Tian's character and knew he wouldn't talk nonsense. I guarantee, Duan Lingtian shrugged and lightly smiled. 674 Chapter 675, Refining Weapons in the Presence of Everyone. When he saw Feng Tianwu's peerlessly beautiful face reveal a dumbstruck expression, Duan Lingtian said, Tianwu, if you want a grade 3 spirit weapon, then Big Brother Duan can refine one for you, but Big Brother Duan temporarily doesn't possess the materials needed to refine grade 3 spirit weapons, so I need you to provide it for yourself. Duan Lingtian's words were extremely casual, and it was as if refining a grade 3 spirit weapon was utterly nothing to him. Of course, in reality, refining a grade 3 spirit weapon was indeed nothing to Duan Lingtian. Big Brother Duan, you want to help me refine a grade 3 spirit weapon? After she recovered from her shock, Feng Tianwu's beautiful face was mixed with slight excitement and uncertainty as she asked. Grade 3 spirit weapon, not to mention her, even her father didn't have one in his possession. In the entire Feng clan, there wasn't a single grade 3 spirit weapon. Now she would have the opportunity to obtain a grade 3 spirit weapon. How could she not be excited? As for the problem of materials, she didn't care. With the resources and reserves of the Feng clan, not to mention the materials required for a grade 3 spirit weapon, even the materials required for a grade 2 spirit weapon might be able to be gathered. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded. Father. After she obtained Duan Lingtian's confirmation, Feng Tianwu looks at Feng Wudao. Meanwhile, Feng Wudao recovered from his shock as well. He'd heard the conversation between Duan Lingtian and his precious daughter, and he looked at Duan Lingtian. Lingtian, what materials do you need? With a raise of his hand, a paper and brush had appeared in Duan Lingtian's hand, and he wrote down a pile of materials. You need so many materials. When he looked at the dense amounts of words on the paper Duan Lingtian passed over, Feng Wudao was slightly shocked. The materials I wrote on there is sufficient to refine 4 conventional grade 3 spirit weapons. At that time, Tianwu will get one, Uncle Feng will get one, and both Elder Kong and Grandma Shu will get one. Duan Lingtian slowly explained. The reason he said conventional was because the spirit weapon gourd that belonged to Zhang Shouyang had cast a shadow over Duan Lingtian's heart. The amount of materials required by that spirit weapon gourd was utterly not something an ordinary spirit weapon could compare to. You also want to refine grade 3 spirit weapons for the 3 of us. Even Feng Wudao, who'd passed half his lifetime, couldn't help but be shocked by Duan Lingtian's verve at this moment. Originally, when he heard Duan Lingtian wanted to refine a grade 3 spirit weapon earlier, he was already extremely shocked. After all, Duan Lingtian was truly too young. Could such a young grade 3 weapons craftsman really appear in this world? However, the grade 3 spirit sword Duan Lingtian took out and the extreme confidence Duan Lingtian unintentionally revealed had instead allowed him to realize that Duan Lingtian ought to not be boasting. If Duan Lingtian was boasting, then he would utterly not take the initiative to propose refining a grade 3 spirit weapon for his precious daughter. Now, not only was Duan Lingtian intending to refine a grade 3 spirit weapon for his daughter, he even intended to refine one for every single person present. Brother Duan, you aren't joking, right? Elder Kong's breathing became slightly rapid, and he asked slightly uncertainly. In the entire Darken dynasty, his attainments in the Tao of inscriptions could be considered to be at the top, but in the Tao of weapons refinement, he was a complete stranger. He possessed a network of relationships that belonged to himself in the Darken dynasty, and his network of relationships encompassed the few grade 4 weapons craftsmen of the Darken dynasty. But even then, he only possessed a few grade 4 spirit weapons. Not to mention that he didn't dare think about a grade 3 spirit weapon. Even to those grade 4 weapons craftsmen friends of his, it was an existence that was far beyond reach. Yet now, someone wanted to refine a grade 3 spirit weapon for him. Most importantly, this person was Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian's miraculousness was something he deeply came to understand a few years ago. At that time, Duan Lingtian had guided him greatly in the Tao of inscriptions, and it caused him to obtain great benefits. At that time, he knew that this young man couldn't be underestimated, as although Duan Lingtian was young, Duan Lingtian possessed an attainment in the art of inscriptions that far surpassed him. Such a young man possessed an attainment that far surpassed him in the Tao of inscriptions had already caused him to be exceedingly shocked, and he felt he'd lived more than half his lifetime for nothing. But now, this young man said that he could refine a grade 3 spirit weapon. If all this was true, then wouldn't that mean that the attainments of this young man in the Tao of weapons refinement was similarly able to be said to be superb and sufficient to make those old fellows that were the most outstanding in the Tao of weapons refinement in the darkened dynasty to blush with shame? Even Elder Kong didn't know why, but at this moment, he actually felt slightly pleased in his heart. Perhaps it was because another few people had joined him on the same boat now. Elder Kong, why would I deceive you? When faced with Elder Kong's question, Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Once the materials are gathered, I'll refine grade 3 spirit weapons for all of you. Elder Kong, the clan ought to have these materials in storage, make a trip and get them. With a raise of his hand, Feng Wudao passed over the paper that was filled with names of materials to Elder Kong. Elder Kong nodded and received the paper before leaving, whereas, Duan Lingtian instead continued to sit before the table and savor the tea Grandma Shu made for him. At this moment, his heart was extremely calm. But at this moment, only Duan Lingtian was able to maintain calm. No matter if it was Feng Wudao and Feng Tianwu who sat nearby, or Grandma Shu who stood nearby, their expressions flickered indeterminately, and they occasionally looking at the violet-clothed young man that silently drank tea and felt they were more and more unable to see through him. After half an hour, Elder Kong had returned, and he brought back the pile of material Duan Lingtian had written. As expected of the great clan that's merely inferior to the darkened dynasty's imperial family. This Feng clan's resources and reserves are shocking. Duan Lingtian was slightly shocked in his heart, as he never imagined that Elder Kong only used half an hour to prepare so many materials. Since the materials had arrived, Duan Lingtian intended to start refining the grade 3 spirit weapons. Firstly, Duan Lingtian arranged the pile of materials Elder Kong withdrew from his spatial ring as he asked Feng Tianwu, Feng Wudao, Elder Kong, and Grandma Shu mainly about what type of spirit weapon they usually used. There were many types of spirit weapons, like spirit sabers, spirit swords, spirit spears, etc. Big brother Duan, refine a spirit whip for me. Feng Tianwu's beautiful face was excited to the point of becoming slightly rosy. When he heard Feng Tianwu's words, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but recall the beautiful scene when he saw Feng Tianwu's for the first time in the Darkstone Empire's Phoenix Nest City. At that time, on the arena of the groom search competition, he'd fought with Feng Tianwu right after they'd met for the first time. He still remembered that Feng Tianwu's weapon at the time was a spirit whip. All right, Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and nodded, and then he started preparing to refine a spirit whip for Feng Tianwu. A spirit whip wasn't a special spirit weapon, and the materials required by it weren't much different from a spirit saber and spirit weapon. Hiss. With a raise of his hand, a strand of violet flames arose in his palm, and traces of copper flickered in the surroundings of the violet flames. Violet copper weapon flame. Elder Kong's pupils constricted as he cried out in surprise. As an outstanding inscription master and coupled with his relationship being very good with those few grade 4 weapons craftsmen of the Darkened Dynasty, Elder Kong had a certain level of understanding towards high-grade weapon flames. He knew clearly in his heart that the violet copper weapon flame was a grade 3 weapon flame, and only a grade 3 weapons craftsman was capable of condensing it. At this moment, he didn't doubt Duan Lingtian's identity as a grade 3 weapons craftsman any longer, whereas, the nearby Feng Wudao revealed slight astonishment as well. Although he was mentally prepared since long ago, when he really saw Duan Lingtian reveal his grade 3 weapons flame, he still couldn't help but be slightly shocked. As expected of the man and the young Mrs. Destiny, he's really extraordinary. Grandma Shu muttered as she stood nearby. Grandma Shu's voice wasn't loud, yet which person present didn't possess a deep cultivation and great hearing. Besides Duan Lingtian who was concentrated in refining, the remaining people clearly heard Grandma Shu's mutters. Feng Tianwu's beautiful face blushed as she sneaked a peek at Duan Lingtian, and she couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when she noticed Duan Lingtian seemed to have not heard Grandma Shu. Presently, her heartbeat was exceedingly quick. Because of that prediction, she had a strange feeling towards Duan Lingtian who's once defeated her. This feeling pulled the distance between her and Duan Lingtian to go closer and closer. At this moment, Duan Lingtian naturally didn't notice Feng Tianwu's guilty gaze that swept over occasionally as his entire body and soul was immersed within refining at this moment. Whoosh, 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 comma. The speed Duan Lingtian's hands moved grew swifter and swifter, and they seemed to have transformed into bolts of lightning that ceaselessly crisscrossed past each other. At the same time, the pile of materials in his hand were quickly melted into pools of liquid by his grade 3 weapon flame, and they ceaselessly roiled in the air. What a miraculous weapons refinement technique! Elder Kong gasped with admiration. Although he was considered an outsider in the Tao of weapons refinement, but as the saying goes, even if one hasn't tasted the flesh, one has seen an animal. In the past, Elder Kong had seen 3 Grade 4 weapons craftsmen refining Grade 4 spirit weapons. But in his eyes, the technique of those weapons craftsmen was utterly unable to compare with the technique of the violet-clothed young man before him. They were completely not on the same level. 2 hours later, the shape of a long whip was slowly forming between Duan Lingtian's hands that raged with Grade 3 weapon flame. Now, it was already at the final moment, and it was less than an hour away from being completely refined successfully. Presently, Duan Lingtian still remained concentrated as he looked at the spirit weapon that was forming within his hands, and he seemed as if he was concentrated staring at his lover. This scene caused Feng Tianwu's feelings to surge slightly. It was still the first time she'd seen Duan Lingtian have such a concentrated appearance. Undeniably, Duan Lingtian's current appearance was very enchanting, and it had completely attracted her. It was even to the extent that it had unknowingly and silently captured her heart. At this moment, she seemed to have forgotten the so-called prediction, and wasn't restrained by the prediction any longer, and she'd truly fallen for this man that was filled with charm. Alas, daughters can't be kept forever. As an experienced person, Feng Wudao naturally noticed the changes in the gaze of his precious daughter, and he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. 675 Chapter 676, I miss him. Whoosh! 1 hour hadn't passed when the violet copper weapon flames in Duan Lingtian's hand had abruptly extinguished, and an extremely dazzling crimson-red exquisite whip which flickered with strands of a crimson sheen had slowly descended into his hands. Tianwu. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he passed over the whip in his hand to Feng Tianwu. Try it. Thank you, big brother Duan. Feng Tianwu's face was filled with unrestrainable excitement, and she received the whip from Duan Lingtian as if she'd received a treasure before taking a deep breath and causing the origin energy in her hand to rage and fuse into the whip. Instantly, the crimson-red whip seemed as if it was bestowed with intelligence, causing it to lightly flick up as if it had transformed into a crimson-red python. Swish! Feng Tianwu's hand shook, causing the whip to flash out instantly like a venomous snake leaving its burrow, and it shot out in full fury. At the same time, 10 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared in the sky before another 7 ancient horned dragon silhouettes condensed subsequently in the sky. The 17 lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouettes converged together and possessed an imposing manner that shot into the sky like a rainbow. 70%, 70% amplification again. Feng Tianwu, who put away the spirit whip in her hand, gazed at the sky above her and the gradually dispersing 17 ancient horned dragon silhouettes, and she couldn't help but be flabbergasted. The nearby Feng Wudao, Elder Kong, and Grandma Shu were dumbstruck. The scene before them had completely exceeded their expectations. It wasn't because they'd seen Duan Lingtian refine a Grade 3 spirit weapon with their own 2 eyes that they were so shocked, as early on when they saw Duan Lingtian reveal a violet copper weapon flame. They knew that Duan Lingtian was indeed a Grade 3 weapons craftsman, and it wasn't difficult for a Grade 3 weapons craftsman to refine a Grade 3 spirit weapon. Now, the reason they were shocked was because of the amplification ability of the spirit whip in Feng Tianwu's hand. Although they'd witnessed the 70% amplification ability of the sword in Duan Lingtian's possession earlier, they thought that Duan Lingtian's good luck had allowed him to refine that Grade 3 spirit weapons that could be said to be at the top grade amongst the top grade. Who would have imagined that Duan Lingtian would refine another Grade 3 spirit weapon with an amplification of 70% again this time? It caused them to be extremely shocked. Would it be luck? For a time, it wasn't only Feng Wudao's group of 3, even Feng Tianwu was shocked by the amplification ability of the spirit whip in her possession. As far as they were concerned, this might be luck. In next to no time, their gazes descended onto Duan Lingtian's once more. Presently, Duan Lingtian had already started refining the second Grade 3 spirit weapon. This Grade 3 spirit weapon was refined for Feng Wudao, and the weapon Feng Wudao carried along with him was a sword. Duan Lingtian was extremely familiar with swords, so refining it was much faster than the spirit whip in Feng Tianwu's possession. In merely 2 hours, Duan Lingtian had refined a completely new Grade 3 spirit sword. So fast, Duan Lingtian's weapons refinement speed was so swift that it caused Elder Kong, who'd once witnessed Grade 4 weapons craftsmen refine Grade 4 spirit weapons, to be unable to refrain from gasping. If he didn't remember wrongly, even if it was those famous grade 4 weapons craftsmen he knew in the Darken Dynasty, the fastest amongst them seemed to have to spend more than 10 hours to refine a grade 4 spirit weapon. But in Duan Lingtian's hands, a grade 3 spirit weapon that was of a higher grade only required 2 hours to be successfully refined. HMPH. Those fellows boasted too much in front of me in the past. If they know that Brother Duan only spent 2 hours to refine a grade 3 spirit weapon, let me see who dares boast again. Elder Kong snorted lightly as he muttered. Uncle Feng, with a raise of his hand, a completely jade-green 3-foot-long blade in Duan Lingtian's hand whistled out to be carried by his origin energy and float before Feng Wudao. Feng Wudao lightly nodded and raised his hand, and the 3-foot-long blade before him had already arrived before Feng Tianwu. Father. Feng Tianwu was stunned. Test it, said Feng Wudao said to Feng Tianwu. Feng Tianwu took a deep breath when she heard this, and then she put away the grade 3 spirit whip in her hand like she was putting away a precious treasure before holding on to the grade 3 spirit sword Duan Lingtian had just refined. The grade 3 spirit sword was completely jade green with azure lights flickered faintly on its surroundings, and combined with its sharp edge, it gave one an indestructible feeling. Whoosh! Feng Tianwu's origin energy soared and gushed into the grade 3 spirit sword. Whoosh! Subsequently, the energy of heaven and earth started roiling above Feng Tianwu, and then 10 ancient horned dragon silhouettes that brandished their claws and bared their fangs were directly condensed and coiled down, whereas, at the side of these 10 ancient horned dragons, another few ancient horned dragons were swiftly condensing into form. At the same time, Feng Wudao, Elder Kong, and Grandma Shu had held their breaths at practically the exact same time, and they looked at the ancient horned dragon silhouettes that were slowly condensing into form with serious expressions. In next to no time, another 7 ancient horned dragon silhouettes had appeared before their eyes. 70% amplification again. The corners of Elder Kong's mouth twitched and his expression was slightly stiff. Grandma Shu was dumbstruck. As for Feng Wudao, a bold guess had arisen within his heart, and that was that so long as Duan Lingtian refined a grade 3 spirit weapon, it ought to be a top-grade spirit weapon amongst the top grade. A single time was luck, a second was luck as well, but if the third time was like this as well, it was very unlikely to be luck. As expected, along with Duan Lingtian continuing the refinement, the final 2 grade 3 spirit weapons he refined similarly displayed an amplification ability of 70%. At this time, Feng Wudao had completely confirmed his guess. So long as Duan Lingtian refined a grade 3 spirit weapon, it would surely possess an amplification of 70%. Now, it wasn't only Feng Wudao that had confirmed this, even Feng Tianwu, Elder Kong, and Grandma Shu had as well. For a time, all of them looked at Duan Lingtian with a gaze as if they were looking at a monster. Such a young grade 3 weapons craftsman was already sufficient to cause extreme shock. But Duan Lingtian instead wasn't just a grade 3 weapons craftsman, he was a weapons craftsman that was capable of easily refining grade 3 spirit weapons that amplified strength by 70%. Although they knew nothing of weapons craftsmen at grade 3 or above, but they could imagine that refining a grade 3 spirit weapon that provided an amplification of 70% was surely not an easy thing for an ordinary grade 3 weapons craftsman. Unknowingly, even the sky is about to become bright, I'll go take a short rest. Duan Lingtian glanced at the 4 people that were staring at him in high spirits, and he stretched before leaving right away. For a time, only the 4 people that were looking at each other remained. Freak. In the end, besides Feng Tianwu, Feng Wudao, Elder Kong, and Grandma Shu practically spoke at the same time. Wu, go take a rest, dawn is arriving soon. At that time, the second phase of the dynasty martial competition will begin, said Feng Wudao to Feng Tianwu. Okay. Feng Tianwu replied and left. Not a trace of exhaustion could be seen on her beautiful face as her beautiful eyes were beaming with energy, and she was utterly not like a person that hadn't slept the entire night. Actually, to a martial artist at Feng Tianwu's level, even if they didn't sleep for a few days, it wouldn't have any adverse effect to them. Looks like we've still underestimated Brother Duan. Elder Kong looked repeatedly at the grade 3 spirit sword in his hand, and he sighed after a long time. He's surely the man in young Mrs. Destiny. Grandma Shu had a definite expression. We've indeed underestimated him. Feng Wudao lightly nodded as he looked repeatedly at the grade 3 spirit sword in his hand, and unknowingly, a wisp of a light smile had appeared on the corners of his mouth. After Duan Lingtian returned to his room, he didn't go to sleep. I never expected that I'm actually not the slightest bit fatigued after refining spirit weapons for the entire night, looks like my memories have already completely merged with the memories of the rebirth martial emperor. Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he sat cross-legged on the bed. Completely merging with the memories of the rebirth martial emperor also meant that Duan Lingtian had truly inherited everything the rebirth martial emperor possessed, including his experience and ability in a certain aspect. For example, when he refined weapons tonight, if it was before, continuously refining a few spirit weapons like this would have caused Duan Lingtian to be dead tired long ago. But now, he didn't feel the slightest bit of exhaustion. When I refined those grade 3 spirit weapons today, it was exceedingly easy, and it was as if the weapons refinement technique and experience I utilized were something I was born with. Duan Lingtian spread out his hands and looked concentrated at them. There are still a few hours before dawn, I can take a short nap. As Duan Lingtian thought, he lay down on the bed and closed his eyes before slowly falling asleep. In his sleep, he'd had an extremely long dream. In the dream, he'd reunited with his 2 exquisitely beautiful fiancées, and passed a quiet and peaceful life without fighting and pressure. They lived in seclusion in the mountains, he took care of the farm while they did their housework, and they lived freely. In next to no time, Kair and little Fei were pregnant successively. When he was about to become a father, Duan Lingtian seemed to have noticed something, and he shuddered before waking up. "Big brother Duan, we're about to leave." A voice that was pleasing to the ear sounded out from outside his room. Duan Lingtian was able to discern that this was Feng Tianwu's voice. Unknowingly, a wisp of a bitter smile had appeared on the corners of his mouth. I was about to enjoy the feeling of being a father, yet this shout of Tianwu's has shattered this dream. While he washed up and changed his clothes, 2 beautiful and graceful figures were still ceaselessly flashing into appearance within his mind. It was precisely the figures of his 2 fiancées, Kair and Li Fei. "Kair, little Fei, how are the both of you now?" Duan Lingtian muttered. Foreign lands. On a magnificent and precipitous peak, pure white snow descended all year long, and it caused the entire mountain to seem as if it had been covered in silver clothes. Whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, 2 swift and graceful figures flew side by side in the air, and in a short moment, they'd arrived outside the snow mountain and stood in the sky. These were 2 women in white clothes and possessed appearances that could be said to be drop-dead gorgeous. The 2 women had comparable appearances, yet they were completely not of the same type, and each had their own merits. "Big Sister Fei." Suddenly, one of the white-clothed women looked towards the south and muttered. "What do you think the young master is doing now?" As the woman spoke, her beautiful eyes were filled with yearning. I don't know." The other white-clothed woman lightly shook her head, and her beautiful eyes that were originally slightly icy cold seemed like melted ice as they emitted dense warmth. "But, I miss him." 676 Chapter 677, Feng Clan Patriarch. Duan Lingtian, Feng Wudao, Feng Tianwu, and Elder Kong soared into the sky and left the estate within the estate. Right at this moment, Duan Lingtian saw 4 people were gathered together in the sky ahead, and the person in the lead was a handsome middle-aged man in white clothes. The middle-aged man possessed a dignified expression between his brows and was obviously one who was in a high position for a long time. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian noticed the middle-aged man looking over. Subsequently, the middle-aged man brought along the people behind him to head over to him. Of course, Duan Lingtian knew his own ability and knew that the middle-aged man wasn't coming because of him. Before long, the middle-aged man approached under Duan Lingtian's gaze and lightly smiled as he looked at the nearby Feng Wudao. "Big brother. Elder Kong." After the middle-aged man greeted Feng Wudao, he looked towards Elder Kong who was by Feng Wudao's side. Feng Wudao's expression remained unchanged, and he nodded indifferently. "Patriarch." Elder Kong instead lightly smiled as he replied. "Eldest Master, Senior Kong." Meanwhile, the 3 people that followed behind the middle-aged man bowed and greeted Feng Wudao and Elder Kong in a slightly respectful manner. Tianwu, the middle-aged man looked towards Feng Tianwu and lightly smiled. As the saying goes, a woman's appearance changes constantly as she grows up, and using this on you is extremely accurate. "Second uncle, you're too kind." Feng Tianwu nodded to the middle-aged man, yet it wasn't really warm. Actually, she did indeed have no relationship with the middle-aged man in the past. In the end, the middle-aged man looked at Duan Lingtian and asked with a curious expression. "This is?" Duan Lingtian's brows raised. Now, he already knew the middle-aged man's identity. The middle-aged man was undoubtedly the current patriarch of the Feng clan, and he seemed to be called Feng Tian Nan. Patriarch, this is Brother Duan, Duan Ling Tian. Elder Kong introduced Duan Ling Tian to Feng Tian Nan, and then he looked at Duan Ling Tian and introduced. Brother Duan, this is our Feng clan's patriarch. So it's Brother Duan, I'm sorry I didn't recognize you earlier. Feng Tian Nan looked at Duan Ling Tian, and he squeezed out a trace of an amiable smile. Patriarch Feng. Duan Ling Tian squeezed out a smile in reply, and he didn't lose his composure because of the middle-aged man was the Feng clan's patriarch. Duan Ling Tian instead didn't know that when his composure entered into Feng Tian Nan's eyes, it instead turned into unfathomableness. Since the moment he heard Elder Kong call Duan Ling Tian as Brother Duan, Feng Tian Nan looked slightly highly upon him, as he knew that Elder Kong wouldn't casually call a junior as brother. A person that could make Elder Kong address him in this way surely had something extraordinary about him. Big brother, let's go. Along with Feng Tian Nan slightly respectfully greeting Feng Wudao and Feng Wudao replying, Duan Ling Tian and the group of Feng clan members soared into the sky and left the Feng clan estate to head towards the cage battle arena. On the way, Duan Ling Tian started sizing up the other three people that followed closely behind Feng Tian Nan. Amongst the three people, two were past age 70, and only one of them was a young man. The young man wore white clothes, and since he greeted Feng Wudao and Elder Kong, his return to calm and seemed as if he was indifferent to everything in his surroundings. Could it be that this person is the Feng clan's Feng Yunshang? Under his curiosity, Duan Ling Tian's spiritual force swept out and instantly detected the young man's cultivation. 8th level of the Void Initiation stage. Duan Ling Tian was slightly surprised, as he never imagined that the Feng clan possessed such a strong young genius. No wonder the Feng clan disciples spread widely that Feng Yunshang was the strongest in the younger generation of the Feng clan. Looks like he is indeed worthy of his reputation. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian was practically able to confirm that this young man was Feng Yunshang, the #1 expert of the Feng clan's younger generation. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian noticed that Elder Kong had turned around and glanced at him with deep meaning in his gaze. Duan Ling Tian reacted to the meaning behind this gaze and smiled slightly embarrassedly. He knew that he was surely noticed by Elder Kong when he used his spiritual force to detect Feng Yunzhang's strength earlier. With Elder Kong's spiritual force that was extremely formidable, it wasn't difficult to notice his spiritual force. Elder Kong's strength isn't simple. Now, Duan Ling Tian, who possessed a spiritual force at the 2nd level of the Void Interpretation stage, was still able to notice the gap that was like a chasm between himself and Elder Kong. According to Duan Ling Tian's guess, Elder Kong was very likely in existence at the 4th level of the Void Interpretation stage or above. At least, Elder Kong's spiritual force was at the 4th level of the Void Interpretation stage or above. Brother Duan, I heard you're a member of the Darkstone Empire. You've come to participate in the Dynasty Martial competition this time as well. On the way, Feng Tian Nan seemed to be extremely interested in Duan Ling Tian and took the initiative to ask. Yes, Duan Ling Tian nodded, as this wasn't a secret. Presumably, Feng Tian Nan had already clearly investigated his identity since long ago, and he was only acting as if he didn't know Duan Ling Tian earlier. Brother Duan's natural talent is extremely strong. I heard that 3 members of the Darkstone Empire advanced from the first phase of the Dynasty Martial competition yesterday. One of them ought to be Brother Duan, right? As he finished speaking, Feng Tian Nan glanced deeply at Duan Ling Tian. Yes, Duan Ling Tian nodded once more. He's a comparatively outstanding young genius of our Feng clan. Brother Duan can get to know him. He's called Feng Yunshang. Subsequently, Feng Tian Nan introduced Feng Yunshang that followed closely behind himself to Duan Ling Tian. I've heard of him. Duan Ling Tian lightly smiled and glanced at Feng Yunshang, yet he noticed that the latter utterly didn't spare him a glance. Duan Ling Tian wasn't surprised by this. As the most outstanding young genius of the Feng clan, having some arrogance was unavoidable. Although with Feng Tianwu's presence, he might not be the most outstanding young genius of the Feng clan. These two are our Feng clan's Grand Elder and Second Elder. Feng Tian Nan introduced the 2 old men to Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian nodded to the 2 old men. But the 2 old men didn't shoot a glance at Duan Ling Tian from the beginning until the end, let alone pay attention to Duan Ling Tian. Obviously, no matter if it was Feng Yunshang or the 2 old men, they didn't take Duan Ling Tian seriously. HMPH. Conceited old goats. After Feng Tianwu noticed Duan Ling Tian falling into an embarrassing situation, she couldn't help but grunt coldly and help Duan Lingtian out of the predicament. Feng Tianwu's words caused the old men's expressions to go grim, yet they didn't flare up in the end. What a joke! This young woman wasn't an ordinary young woman, and the person that stood behind her was far from someone they could go against. If they really irritated that person, they would die without the slightest doubt. Although no one knew what happened and caused Third Elder's disappearance, they were able to guess who did it from some clues. But even if they'd guessed it successfully, they could only deeply bury it at the bottom of their hearts. Once they exposed it, it would be they who died. Duan Lingtian's heart felt slightly warm when he saw Feng Tianwu protect him. Brother Lingtian. When the cage battle arena was nearby, a sonorous voice suddenly sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian looked over to the source of the voice. In the distance, 5 people were flying in the air, and one of them had increased his speed to arrive before Duan Lingtian in a short moment. Big Brother Zhang. When he saw the person that had arrived, Duan Lingtian's face revealed a brilliant smile. The person that had arrived was none other than the Zhang clan's eldest young master, Zhang Shouyang. After not seeing each other for many days, Zhang Shouyang was still beaming with vigor and sparkling with spirit. Lord Wu Dao, Senior Kong. After he lightly smiled to Duan Lingtian, he hurriedly looked at Feng Wu Dao and Elder Kong, and he lightly bowed in greeting. Patriarch Feng. In the end, he looked at Feng Tian Nan and lightly nodded. As for the 2 Feng clan elders, he utterly paid no attention to them. Feng Wu Dao had a calm expression as he nodded to Zhang Shouyang. Zhang Shouyang didn't mind this, and it was even to the extent that as far as he was concerned, the person before him being able to give him a nod was already the greatest honor to him. A friendly smile appeared on Elder Kong's face as he praised. Patriarch Zhang has an outstanding son. I truly never imagined that you actually know Brother Duan, and you seem to know him very well. Feng Tian Nan was slightly surprised. I and Brother Lingtian have known each other since a few years ago, and we can be considered to have fate between the two of us. Zhang Shouyang nodded, and then he said, I've always felt proud for being able to get to know a friend like him. His words showed extremely high esteem towards Duan Lingtian. Brother Duan is indeed extraordinary. Feng Tian Nan agreed. This ought to be Lord Wu Dao's daughter, young Miss Tianwu, right? Suddenly, Zhang Shouyang's gaze descended onto Feng Tianwu, and he revealed a friendly light smile. Big Brother Zhang, since you're a friend of Big Brother Duan, then you're a friend of mine, you can call me Tianwu. Feng Tianwu returned a friendly smile to Zhang Shouyang. Haha, alright, Tianwu. Zhang Shouyang was a straightforward person, and he directly agreed. However, when he looked at Duan Lingtian once more, his gaze became even more peculiar, and he said via voice transmission at the same time, Brother Lingtian, you're really capable. In my opinion, this young Miss Tianwu seems to have already given her heart to you. When Duan Lingtian heard Zhang Shouyang's frivolous words, the corners of his mouth twitched lightly, and he countered. Big Brother Zhang, are you feeling envious of me? If you're envious, then I'll properly discuss it with sister-in-law later, and asked her to allow you to get a concubine. You win. As soon as Duan Lingtian said this, Zhang Shouyang instantly became speechless, and he didn't continue arguing with Duan Lingtian. Or perhaps, it could be said that his Achilles heel was grabbed onto by Duan Lingtian. Lord Wu Dao, Elder Kong, Patriarch Feng, comma. Meanwhile, the Zhang clan members that were left behind by Zhang Shouyang had come over under the lead of the Zhang clan's patriarch, and they slightly politely greeted Feng Wu Dao, Elder Kong, and Feng Tian Nan. This group of people included the Zhang Shouyang's second brother, Zhang Shouyuan. Therefore, Duan Lingtian took an extreme few glances at them. After Zhang Shouyuan was looked at by Duan Lingtian, his originally normal expression instantly went ghastly pale, and he seemed as if Duan Lingtian was a dreadful monster. In the Darken dynasty, the Zhang clan could be considered to be a formidable clan, yet before the Feng clan, it was greatly inferior. In the Darken dynasty, the imperial family was undoubtedly the most formidable power, below it was the Feng clan, and the other first-rate powers like the Zhang clan were only further below. 677 Chapter 678, Zither Young Master, Zi Shang. Unknowingly, the Darken dynasty's cage battle arena had once again appeared before Duan Lingtian. Compared to yesterday, the cage battle arena today was much more bustling with noise and excitement. Besides the third-class spectating area being filled with people, there were no empty seats in the second-class spectating area as well, and even half of the first-class spectating areas were filled with people. Yet the spectating area Feng Wudao's group of 3 sat at yesterday was completely empty. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian followed along with the group of Feng clan members to descend onto the first-class spectating area. Meanwhile, through Elder Kong's explanation, Duan Lingtian found out that this first-class spectating area turned out to have been prepared specially for the Feng clan by the imperial family of the Darken dynasty. Brother Lingtian, I'm heading over first. Zhang Shouyang notified Duan Lingtian before heading towards another first-class spectating area with the group of Zhang clan members and sitting in its luxurious seats. But half of that spectating area was already seated with people, and those people were obviously not from the Zhang clan. Elder Kong, the Zhang clan doesn't have a first-class spectating area that belongs to them. Duan Lingtian asked Elder Kong curiously. Elder Kong shook his head. Only Outfeng clan and the imperial family have a first-class spectating area specially reserved for us. The higher-ups of the Zhang clan and the other first-rate powers have the qualifications to ascend the first-class spectating areas, yet they don't have a spectating area reserved for themselves. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding. As for those figures with exceptional status in the Darken dynasty, like Grade 4 weapons craftsmen and Grade 4 alchemists, they similarly do not possess a reserved place for themselves. But so long as they've come over, anyone would warmly invite them to sit by their side. Elder Kong continued. Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised by this, as no matter if it was a Grade 4 weapons craftsman or Grade 4 alchemist, they were considered as exceedingly rare existences in the territory of the Darken dynasty, and there usually would be many people that were requesting that they help refine a weapon or pill. Any power would try their best to curry favor with such an existence. Uncle Feng, Elder Kong, Tian Wu, I'll be going down first. Duan Lingtian glanced down and noticed the group of Darkstone Empire members were already sitting at the second-class spectating area they sat at yesterday, and he bid his farewells to Feng Wudao's group of 3. Feng Wudao's group of 3 nodded lightly. Patriarch Feng, farewell. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian nodded to Feng Tiannan before flashing out to leave the first-class spectating area and headed towards the second-class spectating area. After a short moment, Duan Lingtian descended before King Yang and the group of young geniuses from the Darkstone Empire. King Yang. After Duan Lingtian greeted King Yang, he sat down by Su Li's side. Zither young master. Duan Lingtian had only just sat down when he heard an exclaim of surprise sound out by his ears. The person who exclaimed was none other than Long Yun. Zither young master. Duan Lingtian was stunned and glanced at Long Yun with a slightly puzzled expression. Only now did he notice that Long Yun was staring fixedly towards high above in the distant sky at this moment, and Long Yun seemed as if he'd seen something that caused extreme astonishment in him. Duan Lingtian followed along Long Yun's gaze to gaze over. In the distance, 3 figures had appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes. The person in the lead was an old man. The old man wore black clothes, his emaciated face extremely calm, and his pair of muddy eyes didn't even have the slightest sheen. Although this black-clothed old man looked to be an ordinary old man, yet Duan Lingtian didn't dare underestimate him in the slightest. A person like this was usually the most terrifying. Experts are numerous like the clouds in the cage battle arena today, and I'm afraid there's no lack of inscription masters with formidable spiritual forces. I can't rashly utilize my spiritual force. Otherwise, I could directly use my spiritual force to detect this old man's cultivation. Duan Lingtian was extremely confident of his own spiritual force. Long Yun isn't looking at him. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian's gaze moved slightly to the left, and it was the place Long Yun's gaze was looking at. A white-clothed young man was followed closely by the left side behind the old man, and the young man had a chilly expression as if he was indifferent to everything in the surroundings. Zither young master. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be stunned when he saw this white-clothed young man. The Zither young master, Zi Shang, wasn't a stranger to Duan Lingtian. A few years ago, before the 7-Star Sword sect was annihilated, and when Duan Lingtian was still at the 7-Star Sword sect, this Zither young master had once descended to the 7-Star Sword sect and spoke nonsense about wanting to marry his fiancée, K.Er, and great conflict was formed between Duan Lingtian and Zither young master because of this. He'd established the agreement of 2 years with Zither young master on the first day they'd met. 2 years later, when Duan Lingtian and Zither young master faced each other, Duan Lingtian was far inferior to Zither young master in terms of cultivation at the time, but because of his spiritual force being more formidable than Zither young master and his mastery of the soul skill, Thousand Illusions, he easily had Zither young master under his thumb. The scenes on the 7-star sword sect's Dubi Peak from all those years were still vivid before Duan Lingtian's eyes. At that time, Zither Young Master was completely helpless before his soul skill, thousand illusions, and Zither Young Master had fled in a sorry state in the end. But when he left, Zither Young Master had once said that he'd seek revenge from Duan Lingtian in the future. At that time, Duan Lingtian utterly didn't take Zither Young Master's words seriously. Along with the passage of time, his strength had swiftly advanced step by steps, and he'd even tossed the threats from Zither Young Master from all those years ago to the back of his head and was indifferent to it. As far as he was concerned, with the current advancement of his cultivation, Zither Young Master had surely already been left far behind him, and was unable to be of any threat to him. Although he still thought this way when he saw Zither Young Master now, he still couldn't help but be surprised by seeing Zither Young Master here today. Could it be that Zither Young Master has come to participate in the dynasty martial competition as well? At the same time that Duan Lingtian was surprised, his gaze moved up to descend onto the figure on the right of the old man. This was a graceful figure. The owner of this figure was a drop-dead gorgeous woman, and when she stood at the right side behind the old and stood side by side with Zither Young Master, they seemed like a match made in heaven. Even though Duan Lingtian disliked Zither Young Master's character, but he had to admit that Zither Young Master was handsome. Flute Fairy, why is she here? This woman wasn't a stranger to Duan Lingtian, and she was precisely the Flute Fairy, Ziyan, that he'd met in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City all those years ago and was also the younger sister of Zither Young Master. What a beautiful woman. Yeah, in our darkened dynasty, there ought to not be a woman that can compare to her appearance, right? She's too beautiful, Presently, there weren't many people that were flying in the sky towards the cage battle arena. Thus because of the existence of Flute Fairy, Ziyan, the black-clothed old man's group of 3 had drawn the gazes of many people. Many people looked at Ziyan and they weren't stingy with their words of praise. Of course, there were some people that didn't agree with the words of others. HMPH, who said that our darkened dynasty doesn't have a woman that can compare to her? Are all of you blind? Looks over to the first-class spectating area where the members of the Feng clan are sitting. Lord Wu Dao's daughter isn't inferior to her in the slightest. A young genius of a power in the darkened dynasty grunted from the second-class spectating area. His words instantly caused the crowd of people to be unable to refrain from looking up. With just a glance, all of them were dumbstruck. That's the daughter of Lord Wu Dao's who has been widely spoken of in the capital lately. So beautiful, she's simply like a celestial maiden that has fallen down to the mortal world. In terms of appearance, Lord Wu Dao's daughter is indeed not inferior to that woman. In terms of bearing, she far exceeds that woman. Of course, she's the daughter of Lord Wu Dao. Instantly, the attention of most of the people in the cage battle arena had turned towards Feng Tianwu. Duan Lingtian heard similarly discussions as well, and he deeply agreed with this. Feng Tianwu and Ziyan had different origins that were utterly not of the same level after all. So, the bearing they'd developed would naturally be quite different. In the distant sky, Zither Young Master was originally following quietly behind his master, yet suddenly, he felt a gaze lock fixedly onto him. In a short moment, he followed the gaze to look over, and with a glance, it caused him to be unable to refrain from revealing shock. Saber Young Master. As a figure that was once part of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he was naturally familiar with Saber Young Master. But to his surprise, Long Yun had actually appeared here, and he'd appeared in the second-class spectating area. Could it be that Long Yun is participating in the dynasty martial competition as well? For a time, Zishang couldn't help but be slightly shocked. As far as he was concerned, the reason he was able to appear here today and possess the qualifications to participate in the competition between the various young geniuses of the Darkened Dynasty in the dynasty martial competition was basically because of his master and some fortuitous encounters he'd obtained. Of course, at the bottom of it all, it was still the contribution of his master. If he didn't have his master, then it would be impossible for him to arrive at the Darkened Dynasty and possesses a superb cultivation environment. If he didn't come to the Darkened Dynasty, then he wouldn't fortunately obtain that fortuitous encounter. It was precisely because of this series of experiences that constructed the current him. Duan Lingtian. Suddenly, a surprised and delicate exclaim clearly entered into Zishang's ears. Zishang was recalled his experiences in the recent years, and when he suddenly heard his younger sister's surprised exclaim, he was first stunned before his expression darkened. Duan Lingtian. This name was naturally familiar to him. It was even to the extent that during these past few years, he'd dreamed back to that day many times, and he wished for nothing more than to kill this person and rejoice after washing away his past humiliation. Yan, where's that Duan Ling Tian? Zisheng suddenly turned around to look at his younger sister and asked with slight agitation. Over there. Ziyan naturally knew her older brother's feelings, and she hurriedly signaled towards the distance. Subsequently, Zisheng looked over. A violet-colored figure sat nearby Long Yun. If it wasn't for his attention being on Long Yun earlier, he'd probably have noticed Duan Ling Tian long ago. Compared to a few years ago, although the violet-clothed young man in the distance had undergone minute changes, he was still capable of recognizing the young man with a single glance. Duan Ling Tian, 678 Chapter 679, 8-Bearer Palanquin. As he looked at the distant violet-clothed young man, Zisheng's eyes stared wide open, and his body started trembling slightly. At this moment, he seemed as if he'd seen his mortal enemy. In truth, in Zisheng's heart, he'd long since taken the violet-clothed young man before him to be a mortal enemy, and it was an irreconcilable enemy. He was unable to forget the humiliation the violet-clothed young man gave him that day for his entire lifetime. As far as he was concerned, the hatred in his heart could only be vented with the violet-clothed young man's death. Zisheng's loss of composure was noticed by the old man that walked ahead of him, his master. Zisheng, what's wrong? Zisheng took a deep breath. His surging feelings were unable to calm down for some time, so he was temporarily unable to answer the old man. Senior. Meanwhile, the nearby Ziyan spoke. It's Duan Ling Tian, the Duan Ling Tian that utilized demonic techniques to humiliate Big Brother at the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's 7-star sword sect's Dubi Peak all those years ago. Duan Ling Tian. When the old man heard Ziyan, he followed along Ziyan's gaze to look at the distant second-class spectating area, and his gaze descended onto the group of people from the Darkstone Empire. That violet-clothed young man, the youngest of them all, he's Duan Ling Tian. Ziyan added. The old man's brows raised as he muttered. I heard that a shockingly young violet-clothed young man had appeared during the first phase of the Dynasty Martial competition yesterday. He looked to be around the age of 25, and his cultivation was at the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage or above. Could it be that it's him? As he finished speaking, a rare strand of bright light flashed past the old man's muddy eyes. 7th level of the Void Initiation stage. The old man's words caused Ziyan to be unable to help but be stunned, and she spoke with slight disbelief. How could this be possible? How could Duan Ling Tian's advancement possibly be so fast? She was slightly unable to believe it. Even though she'd witnessed Duan Ling Tian's natural talent in the martial Dao and knew that Duan Ling Tian's natural talent was shocking, at that time, Duan Ling Tian was only stronger than the group of young geniuses in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. In the entire Darken Dynasty, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was only a tiny place that wasn't worth mentioning. In the vast territory of the Darken Dynasty, experts were numerous like the clouds and geniuses gathered like clumps of clouds. So in the entire Darken Dynasty, the group of young geniuses in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom were utterly nothing. All of this was something that Ziyan felt deeply after arriving at the Darken Dynasty. But now, she heard Duan Ling Tian's cultivation had actually already broken through to the 7th level of the Void Initiation stage. This truth caused her to be unable to accept it for some time. He's participating in the Dynasty Martial competition as well. The nearby Zisheng's eyes lit up abruptly when he heard the old man, and the killing intent in his words were difficult to be concealed. In this way, I have the chance to kill him with my own 2 hands before all the experts of the Darken Dynasty. Presently, Zisheng's mood seemed to have gradually calmed down, and the gaze he stared at Duan Ling Tian with didn't contain the slightest feelings. I heard his strength isn't bad, and he can be considered to be at the top amongst the young geniuses of the various empires that fought yesterday. If nothing unexpected happens, both of you will have the chance to encounter each other. The black-clothed old man spoke with an expressionless face. He'd heard of the matter between his disciple and the 7-star sword sect's Duan Ling Tian in the past. Actually, with his strength and background, not to mention killing Duan Ling Tian, even annihilating the 7-star sword sect was extremely easy. But he didn't do that because he wanted to allow his disciple to deal with it by himself. He wanted Zisheng to stand up from where he fell. Since the beginning, he'd always taught his disciples like this. Yes, Zisheng nodded, and then they clustered around the old man as they headed onto the first-class spectating area. Zither young master. Duan Lingtian naturally noticed Zishang's icy cold gaze that contained killing intent, yet he paid no attention to it. As far as he was concerned, unless Zishang possessed fortuitous encounters that were similar to him, otherwise, even if Zishang possessed a master in the Darkened Dynasty, it would be impossible for Zishang to catch up to him. Even if they really were to fight each other, Zishang could only be a piece of meat the chopping block. When Duan Lingtian saw Zishang and Ziyan following behind the black-clothed old man to head directly towards a first-class spectating area, he couldn't help but be stunned. Because presently, only that spectating area was completely empty amongst the 9 first-class spectating areas in the cage battle arena. Moreover, that first-class spectating area just happened to be at the east, and it was obviously the first-class spectating area that belonged to the host, whereas, the host of the cage battle arena was the imperial family of the Darkened Dynasty. Who's that old man? He's actually ascending to the first-class spectating area that belongs specially to the imperial family. Instantly, some people couldn't refrain from exclaiming in surprise. Without the invitation of someone in the imperial family, even an existence with an exceptional status in our Darkened Dynasty would probably not dare ascend that first-class spectating area. He should be a member of the imperial family. Many people guessed. The experts in the imperial family are numerous like the clouds, and there's no lack of experts that rarely make a public appearance. Perhaps this black-clothed old man is one of such people. It's possible, In the cage battle arena, the crowd of people discussed animatedly as they guessed the old man's identity. The more everyone guessed, the surer they were. A member of the Darkened Dynasty's imperial family. Duan Lingtian's brows raised. For the sake of confirming it, Duan Lingtian raised his head to look at the first-class spectating area that belonged to the Feng clan, and his voice transmission flashed out to enter into Feng Wudao's ears. Uncle Feng, that black-clothed old man is a member of the imperial family. Duan Lingtian asked Feng Wudao. Feng Wudao originally had his eyes closed and was resting his mind, and he remained indifferent even when the black-clothed old man appeared. At this moment, when he heard Duan Lingtian's voice transmission, he slowly raised his head and glanced indifferently at the first-class spectating area that belonged to the imperial family, then said, "Yes, he's a member of the imperial family. He's the imperial uncle of the current emperor of the Darkened Dynasty. Normally, he rarely makes a public appearance, and he's a solitary person. His strength isn't bad." As he finished speaking, Feng Wudao emphasized his words slightly, and he was undoubtedly emphasizing that the black-clothed old man's strength wasn't bad. His strength isn't bad. Duan Lingtian's brows raised, and he looked at the black-clothed old man with slight surprise. Although he was able to discern a trace of indifference in Feng Wudao's tone. However, a person that was able to be evaluated like this by Feng Wudao obviously had something extraordinary about himself, and this caused Duan Lingtian to feel slight fear towards the old man. I truly never imagined that this Zishang would actually take such a great figure as his master. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Disregarding the foreign lands, and only speaking in terms of the Darkened Dynasty, then this old man's identity could indeed be considered to be a great figure, whereas, Zishang, one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the zither young master, was only a young martial artist who possessed a natural talent that could be considered to be not bad in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. The identity of these two people was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. How did they become master and disciple? This was something that Duan Lingtian was unable to guess. Logically speaking, with the old man's status and background, he only needed to say the word and numerous young geniuses with better natural talent than Zishang within the Darkened Dynasty would fight to the death to become his disciple. I really can't wrap my head around it. I really can't. Duan Lingtian shook his head as he was truly unable to understand it. Perhaps, only the black-clothed old man himself knew why he took Zishang as his disciple. Here comes His Majesty. Suddenly, a voice that was like a thunderclap instantly exploded out high above in the sky of the cage battle arena, and it sounded out far away and suppressed the exceedingly clamorous noise in the cage battle arena. Subsequently, the cage battle arena was deathly silent. Those people that were still chatting and discussing earlier had shut their mouths, whereas, those who were looking around earlier had fixed their gazes straight towards the place the voice came from. The Emperor of the Darkened Dynasty. Like most of the people present, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but raise his head to look towards the source of the voice after hearing it. In next to no time, the vast clouds and mist in the distance slowly dispersed. At that same time, a luxurious palanquin that seemed to glow with a golden light under the early morning sun appeared before the eyes of everyone. This palanquin was extremely large. Based on Duan Lingtian's estimation, it was an entire 2 times larger than the palanquin King Yong sat on when he made an appearance during the Young Genius competition of the Darkin Dynasty. Swoosh, 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 comma. It wasn't just that. This luxurious palanquin that glowed with a golden brilliance was held up by 8 people. It was an 8-bearer palanquin. These 8 people were armored soldiers, and they stared ahead with icy cold gazes as they flew forward. Their movements were uniform and brought a type of visual impact to everyone. As the 8-bearer palanquin flew in the sky, it was stable like Mt. Tai, and it didn't shake in the slightest. The cultivation of these 8 people is probably extraordinary. At the void-prying stage, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but think in his heart as he looked at the 8 armored soldiers. Now, he was itchy in his heart. He wanted to utilize his spiritual force to detect the cultivations of these 8 people, but he was slightly worried that there would be some inscription masters present here. The inscription masters here were easily existences that had stepped into the void interpretation stage, and it caused Duan Lingtian to not dare be careless in the slightest. Although even if his spiritual force was exposed, he wouldn't be in the slightest danger so long as Feng Wudao was present. But it was impossible for him to stay by Feng Wudao's side forever. So he still took the position of being cautious. As the saying goes, better safe than sorry. As expected of the Darkin Dynasty's emperor, what a display. As he gazed at the 8-bearer palanquin that slowly descended from amongst the clouds and mist, Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart. When compared to the display before him, the scene when King Yong made an appearance in the Darkstone Empire's imperial city 1 year ago was simply like child's play, and it wasn't worth mentioning. There are people behind the palanquin. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian's sharp gaze noticed that besides the 8 soldiers that held up the palanquin, there were another 2 people following behind. These were 2 young men. One wore white clothes, the other black, and shapelessly, they formed an extremely striking contrast. It's him. Duan Lingtian's brows raised when he saw the white-clothed young man. It would seem like his guess yesterday wasn't wrong. This white-clothed young man was indeed one of the 3 young geniuses of the Darkin Dynasty's imperial family that were participating in the Dynasty Martial competition. It's that young man that presided over the Dynasty Martial competition yesterday. Meanwhile, the crowd of spectators were in an uproar as well, as they'd recognized the white-clothed young man. 679 Chapter 680, in confrontation with the Emperor. The 2 young men followed behind the 8-bearer palanquin, and in the blink of an eye, they'd arrived in the sky above the cage battle arena. Swoosh, swoosh. Meanwhile, 2 more ear-piercing sounds resounded out, and it drew the gazes of most of the people present. Subsequently, under the gazes of everyone present, after the 8-bearer palanquin left the layer of clouds and mist, 2 more aged figures had appeared, and they were old men that were beaming with spirit. In the blink of an eye, the 2 old men arrived before the 8-bearer palanquin and bowed. Your Majesty. The 2 old men spoke respectfully in unison. At the same time, one of the old men walked ahead to lift open the curtain that covered the door to the palanquin and looked in. Your Majesty, please. A dignified middle-aged man in a golden dragon robe slowly walked out of the palanquin, and he stepped on the sky as if he was stepping on the ground. The dignified middle-aged man had an obvious mustache that was shaped like the Ba character, and it looked to be very distinguishing. This Ba character-shaped mustache caused one to have a deep impression of him, and it was like the deep impression the red mole between King Yong's brows gave others. He's the Darkin Dynasty's emperor. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Your Majesty. Meanwhile, besides the group of people that still sat on the spot in the first-class spectating area, and some of them not even having the slightest reaction, everyone in the third-class and second-class spectating area stood up, and they bowed respectfully to the Emperor of the Darkin Dynasty. Only Duan Lingtian stood up with the others and nodded indifferently, and he didn't even bend his back. Not many people noticed this scene, yet the Darkin Dynasty's Emperor just happened to see it, as he just happened to be lightly smiling and glanced at the area that Duan Lingtian stood, causing him to notice that Duan Lingtian didn't bow to him. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was like a giant amongst dwarves in the eyes of the Darkin Dynasty's emperor. For a time, the smile on the emperor's face froze. It was understandable that the people in the first-class spectating area didn't have the slightest reaction, as every single one of them had extremely extraordinary identities, after all. A few of the people were even existences that he didn't dare easily offend. Everyone else has bowed in salute to me, yet why do you not bow? The emperor stroked the mustache on his mouth as he stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian and asked. Could it be that you feel I don't have the qualifications to make you bow? Instantly, the scene went into an uproar. The gazes of everyone followed along the emperor's gaze to descend onto Duan Lingtian in unison. It's that young man of the Darkstone Empire. Although this young man is young, yet his strength is extraordinary, but he actually dares to not bow when facing his majesty. He's truly arrogant. Someone from a tiny empire actually dares to not bow when facing the emperor of our darkened dynasty. It's simply a great disrespect. It looks to me that he's going to be struck with misfortune. The crowd of spectators in the cage battle arena discussed animatedly. Some took pleasure in Duan Lingtian's misfortune while others broke out in cold sweat for him. Your Majesty, he was awed by your majestic appearance earlier, and that's why he was impolite. I hope that your Majesty can pardon his offense. When he saw the Emperor of the Darkened Dynasty was directing his words at Duan Lingtian, King Yong broke out in cold sweat from fear, and he spoke with a terrified expression. Although he was the #1 expert of the Darkstone Empire, he was still nothing before the Emperor of the Darkened Dynasty. If the Emperor wanted to kill him, the Emperor only had to say the word. And who are you? The Emperor looked at King Yong and asked indifferently. Your Majesty, I'm the representative of the Darkstone Empire this time, a king of the Darkstone Empire's imperial family. King Yong replied. The Darkstone Empire. The Emperor pondered slightly and then said, You're the #1 expert of the Darkstone Empire, King Yong. I've heard of you. Your Majesty, I am King Yong. When he heard this, at the same time that he was overwhelmed by the unexpected favor, a bitter smile appeared on King Yong's face. The #1 expert of the Darkstone Empire. Not to mention anything else, he could casually find a large number of experts with strengths much stronger than him amongst the group of experts present. In this place, the so-called #1 expert of the Darkstone Empire was nothing worth mentioning. He's a member of your Darkstone Empire. The Emperor glanced at Duan Lingtian before looking at King Yong and asked with a low voice. Yes. King Yong nodded as cold sweat broke out from his forehead and his palms went cold. At this moment, he only hoped that the person from the Feng clan would be able to speak out and help Duan Lingtian out of this predicament in a timely manner. He believed that so long as that person spoke out, even if this emperor of the Darkened Dynasty was any more displeased by Duan Lingtian, he would give that person some face. Since he's a member of your Darkstone Empire, then as the representative, you can't absolve yourself from punishment as well. Both of you must be punished. The emperor's tone was calm as if he was speaking of a trivial matter. On what basis? Right at this moment, Duan Lingtian, who silently watched the events unfold, couldn't sit idly by any longer, and he flashed out to stand before King Yong and looked up towards the emperor as he shouted out with a light voice. On what basis? Duan Lingtian's shout spread out to the entire cage battle arena. Hiss, 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 For a time, the sounds of gasping rose and fell continuously in the surroundings of the cage battle arena. Most of the people present felt their scalps go numb. Has this young man from the Darkstone Empire gone mad? No matter how high his natural talent is, he hasn't matured after all. So long as the Emperor says a single word, he'd practically only be left with an end of certain death. On what basis? The Emperor's calm expression was finally destroyed by Duan Lingtian, and he abruptly took a step forward before his dignified voice sounded out once more. On the basis that I'm the Emperor of the Darkened Dynasty and ruler over the entire Darkened Dynasty, is this enough? When faced with the Emperor using the power of the Darkened Dynasty's imperial family to oppress him, Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged. Or perhaps, he was utterly not worried in the slightest. Even if the Darkened Dynasty's Emperor wanted to lay a hand on him, Feng Wudao wouldn't be wiling. Not to mention he had a deep relationship with Feng Wudao's entire family. Even if they didn't have a deep relationship, Feng Wudao would still not stand idly by. After all, he was the man that was in Feng Tianwu's destiny according to that prediction, and he was the man capable of saving Feng Tianwu. Duan Lingtian. Su Li's expression darkened slightly, and he broke out in cold sweat for Duan Lingtian. Besides Long Yun, who had an expressionless face, the other young geniuses of the Darkstone Empire looked at Duan Lingtian with slight worry on their faces. Narrow-minded and making a fuss over a trifling matter, I really don't know how the Darkened Dynasty would have an emperor like you. Duan Lingtian raised his head to look at the emperor with a calm expression, and he spoke unhurriedly. In Duan Lingtian's dictionary, there was always the saying, offend only when offended. If there really was someone who offended him, then he wouldn't be afraid of the trouble that ensued. No matter who the person is nor how shocking the person's identity was. Presumptuous. Right when the emperor was angered to the point his expression went ominous, the two old men that stood before the palanquin shouted out. Besides that, the soldiers that held up the palanquin emitted cold lights from their eyes at this moment, and they stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian. It was as if they were prepared to leave the palanquin and attack Duan Lingtian at any moment. As for the other two young men, the expression of the black-clothed young man darkened slightly, whereas, the white-clothed young man looked at Duan Lingtian with a fearful expression. Compared to the other people of the imperial family, he was more familiar towards Duan Lingtian and knew that Duan Lingtian had a deep relationship with that person of the Feng clan. Speaking shamelessly and humiliating His Majesty, you deserve death. As soon as one of the old men before the palanquin finished speaking, he transformed into a bolt of lightning that shot straight towards Duan Lingtian. Father. On the first-class spectating area that belonged to the Feng clan, Feng Tianwu looked anxiously at Feng Wudao. But Feng Wudao didn't make the slightest movement, and he only shook his head. Don't worry, he'll be fine. Practically at the instant Feng Wudao finished speaking, the old man had already arrived nearby Duan Lingtian, and with a raise of his hand, vast origin energy raged. Subsequently, he slapped out with his palm, giving rise to a wave of roiling wind. Whoosh! In the next moment, an enormous palm print condensed into form from origin energy whistled out to envelop Duan Lingtian. Stay your hand. Right when Duan Lingtian thought Feng Wudao would make a move, a rather familiar voice exploded out by Duan Lingtian's ears, and the voice was filled with slight anxiousness. Subsequently, a wave of ear-piercing howls of the wind could be heard approaching him. Swish! A material sword light tore through the sky and easily destroyed the enormous palm print that swept towards Duan Lingtian. Whoosh! At the same time, a tall figure appeared before Duan Lingtian and firmly protected Duan Lingtian behind himself. Pavilion Master Shang. When he thought of the familiar voice from before and saw the familiar figure before him, Duan Lingtian recognized the person that had appeared in time to save him. It was precisely the Milky Way City's treasure-gathering pavilion's master, the vice-guild master of the Darken Dynasty's Weapons Craftsman Guild's main guild, Shang Ying. We meet again, we'll catch up later. Shang Ying turned around to lightly smile at Duan Lingtian before turning his head around once more. He didn't look at the old man that attacked Duan Lingtian but instead looked at the emperor of the Darken Dynasty. Your Majesty, this is a little brother of mine. I hope that you can give me some face and forgive this little brother of mine for the incident today. How about it? Shang Ying. The emperor frowned slightly when he saw Shang Ying appear, and he shook his head when he heard Shang Ying. This matter isn't related to you, you'd better not involve yourself in it. If it was anything else, he would perhaps give Shang Ying some face. After all, Shang Ying was one of the few grade 4 weapons craftsmen in the Darken Dynasty, and doing a grade 4 weapons craftsman a favor was entirely beneficial. But when he thought of how Duan Lingtian had publicly humiliated him, flames of rage leapt up in his heart once more and were difficult to put out, causing him to wish for nothing more than to see Duan Lingtian die miserably on the spot. If it wasn't for him being the emperor of the Darken Dynasty and every action of his represented the Darken Dynasty, he'd have personally killed Duan Lingtian since long ago. The emperor's resolution exceeded Shang Ying's expectations. For a time, Shang Ying was slightly hesitant. If he continued to persist, he would undoubtedly offend the emperor. But if he didn't persist, Duan Lingtian would probably die here today. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration arose in Shang Ying's mind, and he looked at the emperor as he said via voice transmission, Your Majesty, there's something I have to tell you. Behind this little brother of mine is a grade 3 weapons craftsman that has a deep relationship with him. Grade 3 weapons craftsman. The emperor, who originally had a resolute expression, couldn't help but waver slightly when he heard Shang Ying's voice transmission, and there was even slight fear in the depths of his eyes. Is what you said true? Meanwhile, the emperor was slightly hesitant. 680.